Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henrik, and this is Red Ice Creations Radio, and we are coming to you from the west coast of Sweden. Good to have you along today. You can hear us on Thursdays and Sundays through our website, redicecreations.com, REDICE creations.com, where we also feature news, links, articles, and other resources from around the world and beyond. Also, don't forget that we have a growing member section loaded with material for you. Our full radio archive, of course, with extended interviews with many of our guests, but also videos, short films, articles, and more. I want to say thank you for all the encouraging email and all the feedback we've been getting lately. I wanted to let you know that we read all our email, but due to time restraints, we cannot get back to everyone. But that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate your comments, article tips, links, and videos that you send us. Keep them coming. You guys and gals listening to this program are all aware eyes and ears out there that can help us to keep track on all the good and bad news and everything that falls in between that is considered to be worthy of more attention. Today we have an interesting program ahead of us. A few days ago, when we did our program with Ian Crane, especially the second segment for our members, we talked about the Sion 2012 Olympics in London, and I consequently did a few more searches on the subject and came across this really interesting blog called The Cosmic Mind. There were 3 very interesting articles on this very same subject that went into these subjects a bit deeper as well. Posted a few of these stories up on Red Ice, and I decided to invite the author behind The Cosmic Mind to talk more with us about his blog, his findings, and much more. His name is Rick Clay, and you can find his blog at thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. That's thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. We're mainly going to focus on the 2012 Olympics in London today, but Rick has connected this with a lot of different subjects like numerology, the Mayan calendar, the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, and much more. So I suspect that we'll go into a lot different interesting areas here today. So with that, let's say a warm welcome to Red Ice Creations Radio, Rick, and thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. Nice to have you on the line. And, you're a new voice, as it were, on this program at least. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, if you will, Rick, from kind of what area you're coming from and how you started the blog and why and so forth.
Okay, well, I mean, what's recently happened to me is over the past 6 months, I've essentially I've gone through some kind of awakening process where I've started seeing things for pretty much what they really are. I mean, it's been a few years in the making, if you know what I mean. But it seems like something's finally snapped, and I've finally got a realization over a lot of things that like kind of permeate our material world, if you like.
Right.
My history. I mean, I'm only 25. For about 5 years in my youth, I was touring with a band of mine called Fulk, and we released a couple of albums, toured the UK, toured Europe, made the odd music video. After a few years, that fell through. I carried on making my own music and got into graphic design. And I'm currently, like, when I'm not researching, I'm a manager of a design team at a new media company in Leeds, England. So, I mean, to be honest, like when I was about 12, 13, I had an interest in UFOs and everything that was alien. And I mean, after about 3 or 4 years, I kind of grew out of that a bit and forgot about the whole alternate side to reality that obviously a lot of us are researching currently.
Yeah.
Everything started changing when 9/11 happened, and for a good few years, I was happy to go along with the official story, as pretty much a lot of people were.
Yeah.
Saw the film Loose Change. Loose Change gave me a completely new perspective on life. I mean, obviously, I've got my suspicions about the film now of where it actually came from out of such a short period of time. Started researching politics, the New World Order, and I found as I went into that line of research and just doing lots and lots of reading, I feel a real bad negativity coming from everything that was reading. It felt really wrong. It was I just felt it was the negativity of the whole subject involving politics and New World Order was, it was crippling. It was quite disgusting, really. So obviously, I moved on from that and started reading about the the 2012 main calendar stuff, and Zeitgeist was released. I mean, this is all part of the kind of awakening process. Goes when Zeitgeist was released, obviously introduced the idea of religious fraud alongside the financial system and everything that goes with it. And if you've never thought about anything on this scale before, when you're watching those films for the first time, it is it's pretty mind blowing, isn't it? Really. As a result, I ended up wanting to get to these sites. I travelled to Egypt, I travelled to Mexico, I travelled to Malta. I went to see all the European megalithic sites and stuff. Basically, really getting in, into the gritty of where, all these strange sites around the world, pretty much where it all stems from.
Yeah.
And taking my camera out with me, and eventually, I mean, when I was in Temple Luxor in Egypt, started getting some, significant pictures of orbs. If you've come across orbs before, the energetic light balls. I mean, some people claim that they're reflections of dust, but when you're closely analysing them and you see the geometric patterns that are inside the some of the lights that you get on your photographs, they're pretty insane, really.
Yeah.
And this obviously got me thinking on the level of the spirit, and I started realising that for the first 24 years of my life, all I'd been worried about was the world around me and pretty much everything material. And did a bit of research and discovered Reiki. I found a lovely woman who essentially attuned me up to level 2 Reiki. And I mean, since then I've it's such a wondrous kind of energy to have to your life, like Reiki energy, and to be attuned to it is brilliant. Last year was the crucial pinnacle factor in just completely snapping my old mindset, and I'd started paying an attention to crop circles in Wiltshire. Like I knew of crop circles like in previous years and stuff, but not really paid an interest to them. And I'd made a decision with my friends to go down and look at the crop circles. And basically, on the day before we went down to view the crop circles, I'm based up in West Yorkshire in Leeds. I looked on Crop Circle Connector website just to get a good feel for where the crop circles were, so we could find them when we went down. And I noticed that there'd been a new crop circle found, and I was really baffled at this because basically this new crop circle had appeared about 2 miles from my house. And this was pretty much one of the very first times that a crop circle had appeared in West Yorkshire, about 200 miles away from where crop circles normally appear. And so I rang up my friend who was coming down to Wiltshire with me, and we both drove out to this crop circle that had appeared near us, and walked into this crop circle, and the energy in the crop circle was magnificent. There's clearly no one had been walking in this, and all I could put this down to when I was stood in that crop circle was that this crop circle had appeared the night before, telling me that I was doing the right thing by going to Wiltshire to look at the crop circles. Do you know what I mean? Like a synchronistic kind of event in which there's like a full manifestation of a crop circle in a field right near me, and it had they'd never been in this area before.
Interesting.
It was pretty mind blowing. So on the Saturday we took the car out, drove down to Wiltshire to near Avebury and obviously near Stonehenge and the likes, and visited a few more crop circles. And on the night we attended a talk by Daniel Pinchbeck, who's obviously done a lot of work in 2012 shamanic practices and consciousness and the likes.
Right.
At this lecture there was a crop circle researcher named Michael Glickman, and having a good chat with him, and I asked him, I said, why would it be that on the day before we come down to look at the crop circles in Wiltshire, one should appear right by us? Like, what is that? And I mean, this researcher himself had been researching for 20 years, said basically that, when you start showing a true interest in this kind of stuff, like a synchronicity when you call someone and they pick up the phone having just thought of you, it's the same kind of principle. Like, if you show interest to these crop circles, then they'll start appearing near you. And for a researcher of 20 years to tell me that, I was quite stunned at essentially what I was hearing and stuff. And the day after, we moved on to Glastonbury. It was obviously it was on the I think it was the 27th of July 2007, and it was the particular talk where David Shayler declared that he was the new Messiah,
Really?
Which,
Huh.
yeah, I mean, that sent ripples through me because I'd never thought I'd ever, attend a lecture in which you'd seen someone declare themselves as like the second coming of Christ, essentially.
Right,
It was
right.
pretty mind-blowing, and seeing 300 people in Glastonbury Town Hall completely outraged, emotional, crying, like going totally insane. It
Sheesh.
was quite an event, really.
Yeah.
But at this same talk, Ian Crane gave a talk, who you mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and he was his talk centered around the prehistory of the history of an elite cabal that have obviously been working in effort to establish this thing called Zion at the 2012 Olympics.
Yeah.
And Ian had obviously correlated this to a staged alien invasion of sorts. And obviously, Werner von Braun, on his deathbed, announced that the last disaster to hit the planet would be this looming threat of an outside alien force.
Yeah.
So I mean, I left this talk that we'd been to, and I'd got a shitload of things going around my mind. Excuse my language, and
It's okay.
and then following that, I started getting these weird occurrences with the number 1111.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if have you looked into much with the 1111 yourself? Do you
Oh
know
yeah.
about it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, to set the groundwork for where I'm coming from, obviously I've got a few like facts here that I'd just like to say, because obviously it's the basis for a lot of my work.
Yeah, sure.
And obviously this number, this 1111 is it seems to work itself into a lot of things. I mean, predominantly the first thing is the universe itself, and obviously on the 11th of August 1999 at 11:11 a.m. there was a total solar eclipse that was observed through Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And if you move that further on the end date, December 21st, 2012, the end date of the main calendar, the winter solstice, which is when the calendar ends, is at 11:11 a.m.
So I've heard.
So obviously,
Yeah.
so we've got this effect where the universe is ringing these numbers at us, in accordance to consciousness and stuff.
Yeah.
And when you look at it in an astrological sense, with the precession of the equinoxes and the 26,000 year cycle of the Earth wobbling through the 12 signs of the zodiac, we're said to be moving into the new age of Aquarius, and Aquarius is the 11th astrological sign. And so, getting further into it, you look at the numbers of 2112, 2012, and you add all those numbers up, and you get an 11. And then you look into the sun, for instance, and the sunspot cycles are 11 years. And basically everything that you can just keep finding these 11s out of things. And you could argue that, are you looking for them? But basically, when it's that amount of things within the universe, it's not like I'm looking for them, because they are there.
Yeah.
You can't deny that. And so then you start moving into the numerology of it. And for instance, if you get 1111 and you multiply it by 1111, you get the number 1234321. Which is a pyramid. Okay, so you've got a pyramid numerology that you can get out of the 1111.
Backtrack on that a little bit and take it a little bit slower for us again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you got the time code 1111 and you multiply it by the same thing, so 1111 times 1111,
Yeah.
you get the number 1234321.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if you imagine that as a visual, you've got a pyramid.
So
Yeah.
one step up, that's number one. Then you have two, that's two steps up. Is that what you're going at here?
Yeah. So essentially, because you've got the 1234321, if you were to plot that on a graph,
Right.
on an X and Y, you'd have a pyramid.
Interesting.
And the same decreases. So if you've got 111, you times it by 111, you get 12321. You get a pyramid, whichever way you look at it, anything with a base of 1.
Interesting.
And so then, if you look at the 11 itself, and in binary, an 11 stands for a 3. So obviously you've got a trinity out of it. Do you know what I mean? So if you were to convert to binary, it would mean it'd be 3. So essentially, then if you look at this idea of the trinity with it, 33rd degree Masons, the number 33 that goes around, obviously if you turn that into the trinity and you divide 33 by 3, you get 11.
That's interesting.
So you start seeing these 11s, as I'm saying. So then you move on to recent events, and you get to September the 11th, 2001, right? And you realise that the building was stood like an 11. The two towers stood like an 11.
Indeed.
And then you've got 9/11, which is 9 plus 1 plus 1, which is 11. And then you realise that September the 11th was 111 days until the end of the year. And then you start thinking about the first plane that hit the World Trade Center, and it was Flight 11.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. And the total number of crew on Flight 11 was 11. And then you look into it further, and the New York State was the 11th state of the U.S. Constitution. Right. And so then you start thinking about where September the 11th stands in as far as years are concerned. And September the 11th, 2001 stands 11 years from 2012.
Yeah.
Right. And there's an author called Jose Arguelles. He wrote that from 1992 to 2012 would be in a period of May and No Time, the time of no time, which was a transition of the ages kind of period in which, basically world disasters and tension would be on the up and rise constantly. And this period of no time was 1992 to 2012. And so 9/11 in September the 11th, 2001 was 9 years from the start of no time, 11 years till the end of no time. So synchronistically it was placed bang on where it should have been. And so then you start thinking about, was 9/11 an event that was either was it as Jose Arguelles would put it, was it an inevitable event? Inevitable event. Was it designed by the universe for it to happen as it did?
Yeah.
You look into it further, and World Trade Center commenced building in 1966 and finished building it in 1977. So it took 11 years to create as well.
Yeah.
So you can move on from that and forget all that for the time being, and then you can get to September the 11th in history. And on September the 11th, 1990, at 9:09 p.m., that's 11 years prior to 9/11, George Bush Sr. made his very first speech entitled "Towards a New World Order" in the UN, at the UN. So this was 11 years prior. And then if you take that back 60 years, so you go back to September the 11th, 1941, you'll realise that 60 years to 9/11, that was when the soil was broken for the Pentagon.
Pentagon, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you've got this date, September the 11th, again running through this kind of, the nasty war machine of America, if you want to call it that.
Exactly.
And so then there's something that happened much further back in time than that. And there's a book written in 1981, and it was called The Birth of Christ Recalculated. And it was written by a guy called Ernest L. Martin. And he claims to have calculated the exact date of Jesus Christ's birth date based on celestial charts for that era.
Yeah.
Basically, he's worked out with the famous Star of Bethlehem, which was, he worked out that essentially Jesus Christ was born on September the 11th, 3 BC. And this book was released in 1981. So, we've got another date there.
And I think that is, sorry to interrupt there, but I think that's actually a key area to why we potentially are seeing so many things oriented around the 9 and the 11 September.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes into other significant events, for instance, when you think about America and NASA and stuff, the very first shuttle that got to the moon was Apollo 11.
Yeah, there you go.
And then, for instance, in Great Britain, I'm sure I think it's celebrated around the world actually, but on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we celebrate Remembrance Day, in which we honour our war dead, but it's on an 11/11, and it's basically the Queen and a load of other people taking poppies to a cenotaph, which is an obelisk essentially.
Yeah.
So little strange events going on all over the place.
Indeed.
I mean, talking about the Queen moving into royalty, and this is where I'll lead much deeper into royalty later on. But basically, if you look into the history of the word crown and the royal crown, the word crown was derived from Anglo-French word called couronne, which is derived from Latin for corona. But the year that the word crown, was first established was in the year 1111.
Really? That's interesting.
Right. So,
wow.
You can't just say that these are coincidences. All of these things that are kind of connected up. And I get to a point where, at first I thought there were coincidences, but then you think, what is this thing called chance?
Yeah.
What is it?
Indeed.
So anyhow, that's the groundwork for 11. And then this is where I'd started seeing this time code 1111 on clocks and stuff, and this is when I started getting this flood of information. I don't know where I've been receiving it from, but I've been receiving it from somewhere recently. I don't know what it's all about, to be honest. But basically, sorry, did you
Yeah,
say something?
no, I just wanted to say it's interesting, and to some extent, I think that this is in a way information that wants to get out. I think it's kind of a self-containing awareness within itself, meaning that it is trying to reach out and teach us how things are interconnected. And I think that numerology and so-called coincidence or meaningful coincidence, synchronicity, is a perfect way to demonstrate to us that everything is interconnected. And I think that there are so many levels to all of this. So what we're beginning to discover are some of the most, in a way, actually obvious and very clear signs of this. But I would imagine that this is something that actually runs throughout exactly everything. If you have, basically the amount of time to study something or look at it in close enough detail,
I mean, the thing with all the 11s for me is essentially, I come from the viewpoint, I believe in a mind before matter universe.
Yeah.
Everything stems from consciousness. Consciousness precipitates matter, not the other way around, as scientists would have you believe it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way that I can, kind of prove that to myself and hopefully to others is that, I mean, I don't mean to be crude about this, but when, for instance, a man is sleeping and he has an orgasm in the middle of the night, right, the process that has created that is not any physical action. It's all stemmed from thought.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, then obviously that thought has then created the ability to create life.
That's
if
right.
you understand where I'm coming from.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so,
definitely. Exactly. It's a very good point.
That for me is the proof that everything is a mind before matter universe. You can create life with thought.
Yeah.
And, so that means that everything that you're looking at essentially is consciousness. And that's my way of that's where I come from with a lot of this. And given the 11s, connected with the Pentagon and connected with the 9/11 World Trade Center disaster and everything, that to me is indicative of someone else trying to hijack consciousness. I don't know what it is, but for me, there seems to be some kind of other side of things that are hijacking this number for themselves. And I'll obviously lead into that in a bit.
Yeah.
But basically, moving into the Olympics work, obviously, I mean, it's been bandied around the internet quite a bit, but if you shuffle the Olympics 2012 logo around, you can spell the word Zion.
Indeed.
And, there's a lot of stigma against the word, and, for no reason whatsoever. But obviously, Zion stands for the term New Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And this got me, having seen the Ian Crane speech and everything, this got me doing I had an urge to start my own research into this. I wanted to find out if what was saying could be proven, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, first thing that brought to my mind was the poem by William Blake. And William Blake wrote a poem in the 18th century called Jerusalem. And there's a paragraph, the final few words in that poem says, "I will not cease from mental flight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." So basically, William Blake was a known 18th century esotericist with connections to the Freemasons. And, he was famous for such pieces of artwork as Urizen the Creator, which is a big picture of the Creator with a compass opened up like a pyramid. Just like, Freemasonic symbology and stuff.
Didn't he reference the Newton in regards to that painting? Have you heard about that?
There is the Newton painting as well, and Newton is kind of lurched over on the floor with his compass. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
That's a different painting of William Blake.
It is, okay. Yeah.
But essentially in that poem, we'd got an acknowledgement from a guy connected with esoteric research that they were intent on building Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. And so, we're thinking, when we talk about the Olympics 2012, we're talking about something that's been planned for hundreds of years, and there's a lot of proof that I've dug up that can show that. But basically, moving into the Olympics even further, after this talk, and when I got back from this talk in July last year, the first thing that happened was there was a video released by the Olympic Committee, and this was a stadium design video, and it was a crazy CGI, I don't know what you want to call it, action film on how they're going to build the Olympic 2012 stadium. And given what Ian had spoke about with aliens and Independence Day style spaceships and stuff, this has got it all in it. Basically, within 40 seconds of this video, there's 4 chimneys that stand like an 1111, but then it moves into the most significant symbology you could ever see with an Independence Day style mothership for a roof, little UFOs flying all around the London Eye, and then it ends up with robotic streetwalkers in the middle of London stomping around the place, all like towards the Olympic Stadium. I mean, it's pretty weird to watch it, and it's on my blog and it's on YouTube as well. If you just do a search for the stadium design video, you can see for yourself that there's definitely symbology in there, like whether you like it or not. So this got me thinking. I was like, where does this go? Does this mean that there is a significant event looming for the Olympics? And I started thinking to myself, well, if they're about to do this now, they've done this before. They've used the Olympics for such events before. Yeah. Which led me into looking into 1972 Olympics in Munich. Now, funnily enough, these were the world's first stage for global terrorism. The very first global, declared as global terrorism. The first act was in the 1972 Munich Olympics.
Indeed, yeah.
And these Olympics, there were 11 Israelis killed. So we've got the number 11 there. And they were killed by a group called Black September, which is obviously the 9th month. So it's obviously a 9/11 you've got there.
Yeah.
And that particular Olympics were host to 121 countries, which is 11 times 11. So you've got a significant event there with first global stage for terrorism, as it is.
Yeah.
And then, moving on, I started thinking, well, the year 1984, there's obviously Olympics in that year. And it's synonymous with the George Orwell book of Big Brother and, a completely, oppressive state, if you like, a New World Order kind of background.
Yeah.
And I'd briefly remembered hearing things about a closing ceremony in the 1984 Olympics, and did some rooting around on the internet, and obviously came across a video in the 1984 Olympics, which were held in Los Angeles. They closed the ceremony, and the audience didn't even expect this, because most of the audience thought it was real at the time. It closed with a UFO flying over the Olympic Stadium, kind of communicating with the audience in a Close Encounters of the Third Kind style.
Right.
And the UFO eventually closes down and lands in the center of the stadium, at which point there's a load of smoke, and then this alien gets out and tells the audience that he likes what he sees there. So you got this really strange thing out of the middle of nowhere. No one was expecting it, and I don't know how you'd ever connect Olympics with this UFO event in the first place.
Yeah.
But basically, obviously, 1984 symbolic year, UFO landing. So you start thinking stuff going on.
Yeah.
Not sure what. I can't really put my finger on things. And at this point, I'd decided to move away from the Olympics for a bit, because I felt that I wasn't going to find much more for the time being. And it got me involved in looking at symbols of sorts and general symbolism and corporate logos. And I started off with obviously the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill.
Yeah.
And if you notice with the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, on the particular side that it's on, it's the only note that it appears on in America, and there's 4 ones on it, and they ring out 1111 either side of the dollar bill.
Indeed, yeah.
You got the same thing again. And I was looking at that, and basically started comparing it to other, American institutions, looking it through, the FBI logo, the CIA logo, every single one of them. You can essentially kind of draw out the pyramid without the capstone, and have an eye in the center. The same geometrics work in a lot of the official institutions of America.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get to the source of where this was, and everyone generally a misinterpretation is that America was the foundation of all of this. In 1776, and for a while I thought America was the start of all of this New World Order stuff. I didn't think any further than that. My consciousness wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
But eventually, came to me. Britain. Obviously, the British founded America.
Yeah.
On it in a Western kind of empire sense, but looked at the British coat of arms, and if you pick up the British coat of arms, again you'll notice that you've got a pyramid, and where the all-seeing eye is, you've got a crown. It's the same thing. You can draw the same geometrics over it, and you've got smack bang the same symbols coming at you. So I was like, right, well, what's going on here then? This is obviously a lot more, ingrained in human civilization, more than I thought anyhow.
Indeed.
At which point, Which point you then start moving to the famous corporate symbols of McDonald's and Schweppes and Starbucks. These amazing like corporations that are, you'll find them in all the symbolic places of the world. Like when I've been to Rome, you've got a McDonald's opposite the Pantheon and the Egyptian obelisk. And then if you go to the Sphinx in Cairo, and you've got a KFC and you've got a McDonald's right outside the entranceway. And you know, literally everywhere you go, you can no doubt find one of these kind of food venues or whatever, you know, right next to some of these symbolic structures.
Yeah.
And so, with, for instance, explain the McDonald's logo, you got 9 letters in the word McDonald's, and I decided to split that up into pyramid numerology. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Split the word up. Do you know what I mean? Into a step kind of structure.
And I think you have this on your blog, isn't that right? So people that are tuning in can take a look at that.
You can take a look at it on my blog, but basically, to spell it out, basically you can form a pyramid-like word out of it, in which the cornerstones and the top part of the pyramid minus the capstone spell the word Mason.
Yeah.
And essentially what the pyramid is showing is that the 2 arches of Freemasonry, or the golden arches, or whatever you want to call them, emanate from the center of the pyramid and preside all the way onto the outside of the pyramid. So essentially you've got this event that seems to preside over the pyramid. And then same thing goes with the Schweppes logo. I mean, I had a real good 11/11 moment with this because it happened in a glass of Schweppes tonic water when the ice cubes started ringing at me.
Right.
And I thought it was pretty mental, but it was insinuating something was happening.
Nice.
And I looked on the bottle, and the year 1783, obviously on the all-seeing eye, the date 1776.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, we're a bit too close for comfort here. We're in the period of the Enlightenment, is what they call it.
Yeah.
And look at their logo, and it doesn't even take any deciphering this one. There's a pyramid with an angel on top, with a McDonald's-style M presiding over the pyramid. So essentially, you've got more messianic imagery in the logo of a corporate symbol. You know, and all I can think is this company, Schweppes, they teamed up with Cadbury's. They're instrumental in destroying the health of the world because they create sugary drinks and, you know, aspartame-ridden drinks and everything that goes with it. And they're using this symbology. So you can look at that on my blog yet again because it's all on there.
Very interesting.
Get to Starbucks, and Starbucks, if you look at, when you're walking past any old Starbucks, you'll notice that the logo is 3 stars that make a pyramid, and the very top star is seated on top of a crown, which is essentially, you know, symbolic of the all-seeing eye, but underneath the crown is a woman, and that woman is Isis. So the Egyptian deity Isis. And essentially what I've realized over the past few days is that what these logos are depicting is some form of messianic event.
Yeah.
And when you look into a book, there's a book called The Secret Teachers of All Ages from 1928 by Manly P. Hall.
Indeed.
And states Isis is sometimes shown standing between 2 great pillars of Freemasonry.
Yeah.
So deity Isis stands between these pillars. So on the McDonald's logo, where you've got the M and you've got the M coinciding on the top of the pyramid, and the same on the Schweppes logo, where you've got the angel stood on top of the pyramid, they're representing Isis. There's no other way of looking at it, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So basically, Isis is symbolic of the all-seeing eye. It's the same thing. Same as when you're looking, for instance, into the Holy Trinity and stuff, and you've got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
There's the evidence of the kind of, you know, the ever-looming one who sees everything but isn't quite there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyhow, this occult symbolism, it works on a dual level. You know, like optical illusions, for instance, you can now look at a picture and do you see the old woman or do you see the young woman?
Yeah.
It's got the duality, same as everything else when it comes down to religion.
Yeah.
Most people are tuned to see one thing, but it actually means another thing as well. But it depends which version you want to go with. There's 2 ways to look at it. And my opinion on everything with the occult is that it's working on a different plane outside of the 5 sense human reality. It's something that's working in the subconscious.
Yeah.
And going on that principle of mind before matter universe, when you're looking at this occult symbolism, and if one person is, say, looking at the Schweppes logo and they're drinking Schweppes and they're buying into this logo, they're buying into the brand, they're buying into all of it. They think they're just buying into a great drink, but they're also buying into this other thing. They're buying into this messianic event, and essentially, if you think about this mind before matter universe, if this stuff, this occult symbology, is working on the subconscious, and it's working on the subconscious of a global population, then it's got the ability to still bring itself forward into matter. Do you know what I mean?
So it's what you're saying is that with the help of all these knowing people, so to speak, this is propelled forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. For instance, like when someone goes to a McDonald's and they're buying into the McDonald's, you know how clever they got that anyhow. Right. But when they're going in and they're buying those McDonald's, they're also, they're buying into the alternate thing, which is the symbol of, this messianic event on the top of a pyramid. It's empowering it. It's building it into the subconscious, and that subconscious can precipitate into matter at the right time.
And that's interesting, considering that many of these companies are so, they're global players. Some of these companies have bigger, a bigger economy and gain more money than certain countries do.
Well, we've got no idea how they got so successful. There's no reason for it, to be honest, apart from that there's something else there working with them.
Do you also think that potentially this could work the other way around, meaning that human beings, since we've been subjected to, at least in the Western world, almost 1700 years of Christianity and so forth, that the reason also why they might want to pick a logo like this or have this message in the logo is that on some level this speaks to our unconscious. So people who are inclined to lean towards the Christian faith, for instance, are actually in some way kind of lured in by these kinds of symbols, and consequently they.
Yeah, definitely. The thing that I'll draw upon later is that how this works with more than just Christianity. Because if ISIS has many identifications, and she's got an identification as the angel Gabriel and the all-seeing eye and stuff.
Yeah.
But when we talk about this new world order and the one world religion and the one world government, the angel Gabriel is the one figure that can unite Islam and Christianity, because both of them adhere to her as God's messenger.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at implementing this new world order, it's got to be something that combines these two religions. And that particular figure is that thing that can combine those religions. I'll touch on that in a bit anyhow. It gets deeper. I'll be telling you all it is in a minute.
Sure. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I'll give it a bit of time. I'll give you another 10 minutes.
Sounds good.
You know it is. But anyhow, moving back to the Olympics logo and the Zion logo in the 2012 and stuff. Basically, there's a little bit of research. There's stuff on the net about this as well. The company who created that logo was a company called Wally Ollins, and Wolf Ollins. It's a brand agency. And this brand agency was set up by a chap called Wally Ollins, and this man was responsible for branding corporate Europe. So basically, GE Capital, all these logos that have kind of, sunk into the subconscious of sorts, these are all created by this man called Wally Ollins, who created the 2012 logo as well. And it turns out his dad was a Freemason.
Nice.
So the chances are that, there's an interview online where he references his dad trying to get him to be a Freemason. He never actually says whether he is or not, but the chances are it's in the family. And, there's these messages in the logos that this man's produced. It's a Freemasonic branding, company for corporate Europe.
Yeah. Wow.
Essentially.
Really interesting. Sorry, yes, I wanted the name there again. Wally Ollins, is that right?
Wally Ollins.
Right, Thank you. Okay.
Wallylins.
Perfect, thank you.
Right, and so at this point, you've got this connection to Freemasonry with the logo and stuff, and it moves much higher than Freemasonry. That's just like the outside protection for this stuff. I basically loaded up, Google Earth, wanted to have a look at the London site from the air. I wanted to see, what it is that's so special about this place. And it just so happened that the particular site in Stratford was the only last bit of wasteland that was, that was left vacant in London. It was the one last place that they could do things for something like the Olympics. So it's quite lucky that they had it in the first place. And what I noticed was I started looking at the actual street plan of this place. And to go through it, you've got a number of roads that circle the site, and the first road is a road called the Eastern Cross Route. Oh, sorry, the East Cross Route, which is a reference to the Eastern Cross. The Eastern Cross is an Orthodox cross, and it's a modified version of the Patriarchal cross. It's got two smaller cross beams across the side. The next road down, you've got Carpenter's Road, which encircles the site. Carpenter, who was a carpenter? Oh, good old Joseph.
Yeah,
he
of
was
course.
a carpenter, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Next road down, you've got a road called the Great Eastern Road. And obviously when you refer to something as the Great Eastern, it's obviously like the Great Eastern Star. So you look into the Great Eastern Star, it turns out that the Order of the Eastern Star is the largest fraternal organisation in the world that both men and women can join, and it was founded by someone highly connected with the Freemasons, and their symbol is the pentagram. So this is the next road down.
Yeah.
Moving on around the Olympic site. If you envisage we're encapsulating the whole Olympic site here, the next road along is Angel Lane. And obviously the famous angel is the Angel Gabriel. So we've got Angel Lane here. Next road along, we've got Temple Mills Lane. Temple Mills, where the water mills belong to the Knights Templar.
Yeah.
So another connection there. The Knights Templar were the poor fellow soldiers of Christ in the Temple of Solomon. And then encapsulating all of this is Church Road. It's obviously another biblical road name.
Yeah.
So all the way around the Olympics 2012 site, which you could call Zion if you go with the logo, is biblical road names surrounding the whole site. There's not one road name that's not biblical. So you start looking at that and you think, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Because this site was supposedly a fluke that they found this, and what we're looking at is something that is clearly quite well planned. So if you move into, like, for instance, there's one road here that's called is the East Cross Route is called the A12. It's another road name for it. And if I move into, say, for instance, hieroglyphics for a start, hieroglyphics back in the days of ancient Egypt, they were seen as talismans, in that a particular hieroglyphic didn't mean like one letter, like a H. It meant a multitude of emotions. It meant a multitude of meanings. And it basically, it drew in the powers of the stars. That's what a hieroglyph was. It was a talisman.
Yeah.
It wasn't a direct translation. So, like, for instance, when they do a direct translation of the Rosetta Stone, you can't translate hieroglyphics into H, A's, and Z's and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So basically, if you think of this idea of hieroglyphics as talismans, power of the stars embedded in this symbol, if you want to call it that, and then everyone assumes that the English language moved on from that, and that our letters just meant letters, just to spell words out, and that there weren't symbols at all. But the fact is that if you look into the idea that the power control in Egypt never died out, and they've been endemic to the power structure from the very start, the letters on the English alphabet are just as much hieroglyphs as the hieroglyphics were, the talismans.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
If you look at the letter A, for instance, you've got a pyramid with a capstone, a capital letter A.
Yeah.
And then if you look at an S, you've got a snake. And then if you've got like a dollar sign, you've got a snake rising up what could be a kundalini or, a DNA coil, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But basically, these letters have got meanings behind them. And so this main road that cuts through the Olympics 2012 site, which is called the East Cross Road, is also known as the A12 Road. Now, there's hundreds of A roads in Britain. And so what are the chances that of all the roads that cross through it were an A12 road, a Pyramid 12 road? Do you see where I'm coming from with it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting.
It's pretty strange that one road, this is what I'm saying, coincidence is this load of rubbish that this is coincidence. It's not coincidence whatsoever.
No.
And then you look into the situation of where it's situated in London and Eastern London, and you'll find that it's in two areas. It's separated between Leighton and Leytonstone. And I don't know if you're aware of what a ley line is, but basically...
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, if you look into this, the Olympic site is bang on where two ley lines cross over. So we're on about something that's connected to the energy grid of, the world, like the lifeblood of the earth, if you want to call it that.
Nice.
Interestingly enough, before when they commenced work on the Olympics 2012 site as well, I got this information off the chap on a message board, but he basically said that they'd organised a massive rave on the Olympic 2012 site, in which no doubt there's a lot of government-sponsored drugs out there. and a lot of energy being given off.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you think about these energy lines, and they're inviting people to have raves on these sites, alongside holding some of the biggest like competitions in the world ever. Think about what's happening with all that energy.
Oh,
Where
yeah,
is
of
that
course.
going? It's probably being fed into the system somewhere. And I think that's I mean, there's a lot of for instance, as far as UFOs are concerned and stuff like that, if you look into UFO sightings and stuff, a lot of them can be attributed to being near ley lines and stuff, because obviously a UFO isn't necessarily something that's definitely fixed in our particular 3D world, something that could be obviously of another dimension of sorts.
Yeah.
But basically, like, you've got this Zion street map that's fully biblical in every way, and you then decide. Well, I decided to pick up the Bible. I don't normally pick up the Bible. I'm not that type of person, but basically picked up and went to the Book of Mark, and I decided to go to the chapter 11, verse 11. You know, the old 11:11.
Yeah.
We got this passage here. Then Jesus went into Jerusalem and into the temple and looked around at everything. Since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. So we've got a mention of Jesus entering Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Which is obviously Zion's the New Jerusalem. And it says that since it was already late, he went out with his 12 disciples to Bethany. Right next to the Olympics 2012 site, down a Roman road, is a place called Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green, Bethany, sounds the same, pretty close, you know, not too far off.
Yeah.
Bethnal Green is 3.3 miles, 33 degree Masons and everything, 3.3 miles from Charing Cross, the centre of London.
Yeah.
So symbolic again, numerology and everything that goes with it.
Of course, I don't know if you've heard, but if we look at the research of Ralph Ellis, he talks that Mary Magdalene might have been Mary of Bethany. You know, there's a whole connection between Bethany and the family of Jesus, if you will, or you know.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, with the whole idea of the Dan Brown bloodline and the Priory of Sion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's I mean, I'll get onto that shortly, but that's all part of the plan. That's all part of what's intended here. They wanted to unseed the public with the idea that there's a lost bloodline of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, pretty scary. To top it off, but on a funny note, have you heard of EastEnders before?
Come again? Say it again.
EastEnders, the English soap opera.
No, I have not. No.
No, right. It's a popular thing that most of, I'd say 90% of the population probably watch it. Unfortunately,
really?
It's most typical soap operas, and if you watch the intro sequence to that, basically behind the EastEnders logo, where, you know, on this intro sequence, is the Olympics 2012 site. So basically this thing that's making everyone forget about what's going on around them, that's distracting them, providing them with rubbish stories and terrible plot lines and everything, stopping people from thinking, is symbolically showing this area on the TV screen every night of the week.
Interesting.
Quite
Very
weird.
Interesting, yeah.
So, I mean, now I can get onto, I think I've set a good standing for this whole idea of Zion and this biblical event of sorts.
You know what I think we should do like this, Rick? I think that we should take a break right here, actually, because this has been basically an hour-long preface here, and you know, obviously I've got tons of questions and comments, but I definitely want to just let you kind of lay out what you have here, so to speak, and we can analyze that later on. But I think that we should take a little break and then continue in our members section and talk more about this, because I know that there's tons more to talk about regarding this. What do you think? Yeah. So what do you think, Rick? Is that a good idea?
That's fine. That's brilliant.
Let's do like this before here, though. That as we mentioned, we've kind of set the preface here, and we're gonna really get into the juicy stuff here more in the member section. But I want to finish off with you telling us a little bit more about your blog, and also let me know if you have any ideas so far to put this into another form, a DVD, a book, because obviously there's a lot of material here. Any ideas about that?
Well, I was only thinking about this the other day, because obviously a blog is a limited way to get the information out. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my full kind of ideology is that everything that I'm doing is going to be free. I don't believe in charging for anything.
Yeah.
Because this capitalist system that's falling down around our necks. I know I haven't got any explanation as to what can replace that, but I'm certainly not intent on distributing my work in any other way apart from freely. It'd be lovely to. I mean, I was talking about this earlier with a friend of mine. It'd be it'd be a good thing for a film of sorts. I think I've got enough stuff here for a film, and I'd like to try and do that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because that obviously something like that is much more manageable for the masses.
Of course.
And it's about reaching the masses with this information,
And
particularly.
I mean, also, of course, if you come from a perspective where you can, finance a film like that, that is great. But also, consider the fact that if you charge a small amount, that might also get you pursuit on the next or the following productions, which mean that you can heighten your production quality and you can reach more people. So I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from, but it's also a good idea to keep the other side of that issue at hand, so to speak, as an alternative.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You need to eat too, mate. So
I need to think a lot about this stuff, really. I do too much thinking as it is, to be honest. But I'm sick of thinking.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you really kind of also tapped into the intuition, and then the thinking part of all of this is of course, to analyze it within the conscious mind and to try to see how all these pieces fit together. But I mean, what you've laid out so far here is a brilliant picture, and it's going to be really interesting to hear more about this also, of course, in our member section. But mention for us, before we go there, mention your your blog address for us, so we know how to find more of your material.
Yeah, I've got a shortened address. You can get to it from http://www.thecosmicmind.co.uk.
Very good. Again, thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. Do check it out. It's tons of material on there, and Rick is really in tune with the muse, as it were. So I expect a lot of interesting stuff has already, of course, passed through his way and through his blog. But I suspect more interesting stuff is gonna keep on evolving here as well. So, but we'll do like this then. We'll take a short break here. We'll return in our member section, and so stay with us, Rick, and we'll talk more soon.
Okay, brilliant.
Before we continue with Rick Clay, I want to mention that our new forum is up and running. RedIceForum.com will get you there. It's one open forum and one members forum. So if you want to connect with other listeners or other Red Ice members, to talk some about the recent radio programs, recent headlines, discuss solutions, or what have you, click on forum on our front page, and from there you can register. Don't miss our continuation of our program with Rick Clay. We have a lot more information and interesting points to cover as we tie things together in the thesis that Rick is presenting to us. This is not to be missed, so head on over to redicecreations.com, REDICE creations.com, and click on subscribe to get all the information on how you can sign up and get instant access to the member section. For everyone who want to go deeper into these subjects, this is highly recommended. We have a lot of material waiting there for you, with new content added on a regular basis, so do check it out. We're going to end this segment with a really nice instrumental piece that is called Adrift, that is by Rick, that he sent me. As he mentioned in the interview, he's a musician and writes his own music. You can find his solo project via myspace.com/somewhere not here, all one word. So it's myspace.com/somewhere not here. It's good stuff. So thank you for tuning in, and thanks to Fredrik behind the controls. We'll catch you after this break. warm welcome, Red Ice members. We are talking to Rick Clay. We are continuing our fascinating discussion on the 2012 Olympics. Of course, that's the node in all of this. But this connects with so much more, as you heard in the first segment. And basically, we're going to continue here talking more about Rick's findings and see where this leads us. So I'm going to ask you, Rick, to just basically continue on the trail that you ended in our first segment, if you will.
Okay. Right, well, obviously we've laid out a ground plan with a street map of, the Zion Olympics in 2012, like biblical road names left, right and centre, symbology and symbols and everything, it's all over the place. So I sat down and I started thinking to myself, so what is going to happen? Obviously, this is something that's clearly been in the making for. I mean, I'd presume that those roads have been named them roads for over 100 years, because the street map hasn't changed in that time. And so what I started looking into was the idea of the Trinity, because obviously the pyramid numerology and everything gets involved in all of this. And obviously I think there's a lot to be answered for in there. And so obviously the precession of the equinoxes is a 26,000 year cycle, in which a roughly 26,000 year cycle, and takes just over 2,000 years to transition into a new age. Obviously 26,000 years through 12 signs of the zodiac, and that's about 2,100 for a new age. And obviously, with the dawn of Christianity under Jesus, we entered the age of Pisces, which was symbolised by a fish. And prior to that, under the age of Aries, we were symbolically represented with Moses and his ram's horn. So, and we're reportedly moving into the 11th astrological sign of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. And so you start looking into religion as a whole, and you realise that every time that there's, one of these kind of, transition of the ages, if you want to call it that, there's almost like a new Trinity event, which finds itself, radically shaping the landscape. So, for instance, the last Trinity event we had essentially was the Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, who had been touched by the angel Gabriel. Trinity, and obviously in Christianity as a whole, you've got the Holy Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is symbolic again for the angel Gabriel. Hindu religion, we've got Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Jewish Trinity, which essentially not as personified, but was Moses, Ark of the Covenant, and the Temple. And then obviously moving into the human body, we've got the spirit, body, and soul. We've got it all, but the fundamental Trinity of the ages, like that started it all, was the Osiris, Isis, and Horus connection. Obviously Osiris and Isis, mother and father, giving birth to Horus, who was essentially personified, and it was the sun. But so, given that we've got this 1776 on the gold, the Great Seal on the dollar bill, starting at 1776, we've got the Latin of Novus Ordo Seclorum, and it's literally Latin for New Order of the Ages. So it's not New World Order, it's New World Order of the Ages. So it's obviously insinuating it's to do with the transition of the equinox, of the ages moving into the sign of Aquarius. And so I started thinking to myself, well, if we're moving into this, we're going to have to expect new leaders. We're going to have to expect this new kind of, forefront of religion that's going to come forward and, save the planet as such. Well, that's how they're going to deal with it.
Sell it to us, yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to sell it to us? Come on, give us your best shot. Basically, I started looking towards royalty, because obviously, royalty seems to be where it's at, in the sense of the coat of arms of Great Britain. It's on there. But everywhere I look, it always leads me to royalty. It's a bit like David Icon's reptilian kind of stuff. It always kind of leads to this weird thing, whatever you want to call it. And obviously William is a symbolic person within the continuation of the royal family and everything. But basically, I've nothing to go on at first, and I just had this real small whim. And I thought, Diana, is she going to be the personification of Isis? Is she going to be the next person to be identified with this god? And thinking it through, I was like, quite probably not, but let's have a look anyhow. May as well have a look. And so basically, to just talk about Isis a little bit. Isis is a moon goddess, so symbolised by the moon, and she can be identified with the Greek god Artemis. She can be identified with the Roman god Diana, and the angel Gabriel, which is the Holy Ghost. And she's always the third in the Trinity. She's the apex of the pyramid.
Yeah.
She's the all-seeing eye, and this is correlated because if you watch, for instance, the film Constantine with Keanu Reeves. I only watched this the other week, but there's a scene in there where there's a particular actor who plays the angel Gabriel, and Keanu Reeves walks up to her and he says, "What have you been seeing with your all-seeing eye of late?" Right? No one would pick up on that unless you knew if you read this stuff, but it was there.
Yeah.
There's obviously the connection between the all-seeing eye and the angel Gabriel.
Yeah.
So, out comes Google, as it does, and I started doing a search for Princess Diana and Isis. So the first thing I stumbled across, Princess Diana's perfume, her official perfume, is called Isis. So it's like quite a good connection for a start. She's only got one official perfume and it's called Isis. So you start looking into things a bit more, and then you see that Princess Diana has got a memorial, which is a ring of water, and it's in the Serpentine, right next to Buckingham Palace in London. And I went down there to have a look at it and see if I could see anything else. But basically, this ring has east and west kind of flows of water, and the flow down this ring, and then at the other end they conjoin, so east and west meet. So if you think of that symbology of east and west meeting, Islam and Christianity conjoining, do you know what I mean? The whole idea of unifying something into one.
Yeah.
So there's the symbology of the unification of two extremes in this ring of water. But basically, if you look into Isis, she's identified with the Holy Ghost, as I've said, and the angel Gabriel. And now in the film The Lord of the Rings, which is an esoteric piece of work by J.R. Tolkien, obviously everyone knows the Lord of the Rings because it's been put on the cinema screens, but there's a character in there called Galadriel, and if you look into the history of the character Galadriel, she was identified with the angel Gabriel, i.e. that's what she was, that's what she's symbolic for, and she was the wearer of a water ring. She controlled the water ring. So obviously you've got Princess Diana, water ring memorial, where east and west meet, combined with the angel Gabriel in Lord of the Rings, or Galadriel being the water ring bearer. So you've got this symbolic figure and this this symbolism running throughout. So moving on to the next thing, how else can I identify Diana with Isis? And so you start looking at the Pont d'Alma, where she died, where she had a horrific car crash. And obviously there's stuff on the internet already that insinuates that the Pont d'Alma was a pagan sacrificial site. And it was used like ritually for hundreds of years, like prior to the modernisation of the area.
Right.
Outside of the tunnel, we have a Flame of Liberty, which is in tribute to Diana's passing. The Flame of Liberty, which is similar to the Olympic torch. Well, in fact, it is the Olympic torch. But if you think about the Flame of Liberty, and then you think to the Statue of Liberty in New York, the Statue of Liberty, Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval will all state that the Statue of Liberty in New York is symbolic for Isis. And outside where Diana died, you've got this, Flame of Liberty statue, if you want to call it that. And again, if you go back to the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, Isis carries with her the sacred fire religiously preserved and kept burning in a special temple by the Vestal Virgin. The fire is genuine, immortal flame of Isis. So symbolically, what she's got outside the Pont d'Alma is a connection to Isis yet again. So moving on, I'd got wind of a tribute in Harrods, and this is where obviously, do you know much about the Diana murder inquest and everything that goes with it?
Much of it, not all the details, but the overarching story is very familiar to me, yes.
Right, yeah, obviously there's the whole conspiracy, the idea that she was murdered, and Al-Fayed believed that she was murdered, and there's the fight with the royal family, essentially.
Yeah.
If you go to Harrods, and this is where it's proof that both sides are in on the same act, and this shows that this whole idea of the conspiracy of the murder of Princess Diana is all part of the intended stage play that's been going on all along. In Harrods, I went up to a woman and I said, "Where's the Princess Diana memorial?" She went, "Oh, it's in the Egyptian staircase." So I was like, "You're joking me." So I get led to this Egyptian staircase, and you go in, it's real. I've been to Egypt, and it's pretty much exactly the same as what you'd expect in Egypt. Real grand, golden-looking, like staircase with escalators in it and stuff like that, and loads of cheap perfumes. Well, not cheap, really expensive perfumes on sale.
Yeah.
And you walk over to the shrine of Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed, and you've got these two pictures. You've got obviously Diana and Dodi. Think about that. You've got Christianity and you've got Islam.
Right.
And these two pictures are being symbolically held up by a dove. And the dove is also attributed to the Holy Ghost, which is the same thing as the angel Gabriel and everything else that goes with it. So you've got symbology there. Below these two photographs, you've got a pyramid, right? A 3D pyramid with a time glass in it. So symbolic to pyramids and time and stuff.
Yeah.
Then on either side of that, you've got two very tall candles, looking like a number 11 and also looking like the two pillars of Freemasonry that ISIS is standing between. So what I'm here and proposing today is that essentially we have got Princess Diana being identified with the fertility god of Isis.
Very interesting. Do you have, by the way, taken any pictures of this memorial?
I've got photos of it. The problem I've got is I can't write enough in enough time because I work full time as well to get this all out. Do you know what I mean? It's such a big thing to write about. Of
course.
It requires a lot of time.
Yeah.
But basically, so you think about this with the New World Order, they wanted a one world religion. We've got the combination of Christianity and Islam here symbolically in Harrods, right? And obviously Islam and Christianity both accept the angel Gabriel as a messenger of God. So we've got the proof here that they want to do this with Diana. They want to identify her with ISIS. So what does that make Prince William? If ISIS is, the mother fertility god, that obviously means that William naturally becomes the son.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So looking at this, I thought, right, we have to do a bit of research into William now. And I've 6 months ago, someone said that I was going to be researching the royal family. I'd have laughed my head off and said, get away. It doesn't concern me whatsoever. But I've ended up being driven down this path, and it's doing my head in.
Yeah.
but anyhow, Prince William's birthday. He was born on June the 21st. Do you know when June the 21st is?
That's the summer solstice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, the Son of Most High.
Yeah.
So in the New Testament, the angel Gabriel announced, "He shall be great, and he shall be called the Son of the Most High. The Holy which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God." Right?
Yeah.
So we've got Prince William's birthday, and it's on the solstice when the sun is most high.
Yeah.
Right? And then you look into it a bit further. How old is he in 2012?
Probably 33, right?
No, he's 30 years old.
30 years old, okay, yeah.
Connection here. Jesus began his ministry at age 30.
There you go, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can't get away from this. It's all over these people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so symbolically, 30 years old, William's birthday, symbolically can be seen as an XXX in Roman numerology.
That's right, yeah.
And it just so happens that the Olympics 2012 is XXX. So it's the same Olympiad.
Exactly. It's the what does it be? The 30th games,
30th.
Summer Olympic Games, XXX.
Yeah. So right, then you start thinking, what I was saying about, for instance, symbology and stuff like that, and you've got McDonald's and you've got Starbucks and you've got Schweppes, all like essentially occult symbology. That's when people are buying into these things, they're subconsciously buying into this messianic event, as I've stated before.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about this and the symbolism of the XXX, the triple X, think about what most single men do on the computers. I know it sounds crazy, but, that's powerful energy that's being wasted there. This life-giving energy. And, they're symbolically buying into that triple X stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Same as you've got the triple X film with Vin Diesel, in which he's seen as this heroic figure, and everyone went to the cinema and powered the triple X thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this shows you how endemic this thing is, and how crafty these things are.
Of course, and also I think if you convert the alphanumerical number on a alphanumeric system from 1 to 9, then I think X becomes 6. So it's basically 666 right there.
6. Well, I didn't know that, but that's good.
Yeah.
Right. So the next thing on, moving into William yet again, more stuff to do with him. It turned out a few months ago that he'd been made the 1,000th member of the Order of the Garter, Now, he's actually the 999th member of the Order of Garter, but they changed it to 1,000 because of someone, not being registered or something on the official log. But as you will know, the Order of the Garter is the parent organisation of Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about that situation that we've got there, what are the chances that Prince William, if they hadn't pre-planned this, would happen to be the 1,000th member? I.e., in the chronology of events, it just so happened that he was bang on the 1,000th member.
And that's also could be interpreted as the 1,000 points of lights. I don't know if you heard about that.
I don't know about that. No, that's new to me.
Yeah. Okay, continue. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? It's quite a hard coincidence to fall upon that it'd be the 1,000th member in as it happens.
Of course.
But then go on further on again. Did you come across the Prince William received his wings news all over Sky News and stuff recently? I don't know if you came across that. Basically, he's been in the RAF. He's been doing his duties, and there's all the RAF symbolism flying everywhere at the moment. They're trying to get everyone into the armed forces by giving everyone a bank holiday for Armed Forces Day. You know what I mean? Let's keep the war going, guys.
Yeah.
But essentially, with the RAF, he said he received his wings. And if you look at the symbolism of the RAF wings and the RAF, basically, when you don't have your wings, the RAF is the logo is the RAF in a circle of I can't remember the name for it, a wreath, like a circle wreath.
Okay, yeah.
So if you imagine that as the Egyptian sun disk for Horus, and then when all of a sudden they say he's got his wings, they put these wings on the RAF sun disk, and it makes it exactly the same as the Horus sun disk with wings.
There we go. Huh.
So the fact that they was pushing around the fact that he's got his wings, it was just symbolic for him saying that he's ascending into this thing, whatever you want to call this thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I mean, here I am again saying that Prince William is as I said, with the Dan Brown book and the Da Vinci Code and everything that goes with it, they're trying to get the masses to believe that there's a lost bloodline of Jesus Christ, and there might be. But what I'm saying is they're trying to get everyone to accept that. And so when Dan Brown's book, which was a terrible book, written really badly, but obviously interesting story,
sure.
When everyone from, like your 60-year-old woman who doesn't get out much to your Benidorm crew or whatever in Spain, when they were all running around reading this book, going on about it, they were all having the seed implanted in their head that there's a lost bloodline to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And you think about the idea of the Priory of Sion. This thing is all to do with the Sion Olympic Games.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same thing. But moving on, obviously the last thing symbolic with the Queen as well is that it's a Diamond Jubilee in 2012. And so they're going to be celebrating the Queen for a year long, which is a lot of celebrations.
Yeah.
But moving on, as always. Olympic bid 2012, the London Olympic bid. We received it, and we received confirmation on July the 6th, 2005. The day after was the 7/7 bombings of London, but on that particular day, everyone, the news would have us believe, was full of positive energy that Great Britain had won the Olympic Games. I mean, I think there's probably only about 2% who were bothered about it, but the media would obviously tell you that everyone was, going out and getting drunk about it, but essentially no.
Yeah.
But what they didn't tell you, and it's been covered up by the news, but it's on the internet, but it never got covered in News 24 or whatever you watch. Basically, on the same day that London bid was won for the Olympic Games, right, there was a huge, well, I don't know what you want to call it, massacre on the island of Haiti, in which 24 people confirmed dead after more than 300 heavily armed UN troops carried out a major pre-dawn military raid in Cité Soleil. So what happened was the UN troops, which is supposed to be a peacekeeping force, not something that goes out and actually, does stakeout operations on drugs barons.
Yeah.
They did this pre-dawn military raid in which they killed 24 innocent people. Right, and there's a lot of people looking into this. But what is symbolic is the place where it was. It was in Cité Soleil, which is Sun City. Right?
Yeah.
Gets even weirder. It's one of the poorest communities in Haiti. It's one of the poorest communities in the Northern Hemisphere. It's got endemic AIDS, poverty, everything. People are starving in this place because of the way that it's, essentially it's been crippled by the power structure.
Yeah.
But basically, it's one of the poorest communities, as I've said, and it's in a place called Port-au-Prince. So it's Prince, Port, Sun City.
Mm.
On the same day the Olympic bid was won.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that symbolically you've got Prince and Sun, and then you've got this thing that I've connected with Prince William. Was this another thing equally like buying into an event with such a negative, horrible event in which the UN massacred loads of people, or 24 people? Its symbolism is right through it, and it gets even worse because basically the UN Colonel Marino suggested that ballistic tests can be done on the dead, and he says records from the Medicine Without Borders shows an influx of civilian casualties starting at 11 a.m. The numbers are on the Wikipedia page, so 11 a.m. brought in. And then you look into Port-au-Prince itself. Port-au-Prince celebrated its independence 200 years ago. I don't know what it celebrated its independence from because it didn't seem to get any better. But the bicentennial monument that they erected in the independence of Port-au-Prince just so happens to be a pyramid without a capstone and an Olympic flame at the top.
Oh, nice.
Right. So I don't know what that's saying, but you've got Sun City with a prince and you've got a pyramid with an Olympic flame on the same day that the Olympics 2012 bid was won.
My
that
God.
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. You know, it just doesn't happen. Too much in there. So obviously getting into touchy areas and stuff here because it's pretty dark, really, when you think about it. I mean, moving into the Olympics 2008, I found this out recently. The 2008 logo, have you seen the Beijing 2008 with the little guy and his wobbly legs?
I've seen that, yes, yeah.
It doesn't look very much like an athlete, but, you know, given it's the Olympics and stuff. But it just so happens that if you decide to compartmentalise this logo into 4 different sections, it spells the word Zion.
Really now?
What are the chances that 2 Olympic logos in like 2, you know, in succession, both can easily spell the word Zion without any form of trickery?
You know what? I'm looking at that as we speak here. I'm looking at your post about this, and that is incredible. Did you decipher that, or did you pick up that from somewhere else?
When I just deciphered it the other day.
Wow.
Just having a look at it and just saw it, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
That's really interesting. I'm going to have this picture up on the website or link up this posting here of the blog so people can take a look at that. And that is really interesting. Wow.
Obviously, you've got the slogan, One World, One Dream for the Beijing 2008 Olympics. Doesn't that sound like a New World Order slogan to you?
Indeed.
Yeah. And so anyhow, this goes on further because there's more symbolism to do with the Olympics 2008.
Yeah.
Basically, on the 11th of November 2007, so that's 11/11, they released 5 mascots, right, for the Beijing Olympics. And these are weird little mascots that all got pyramid-style hats on. And essentially, each of these mascots correlates to a colour ring of the Olympic logo. You know, we've got the green, orange, red, black and blue rings. And each of the mascots correlate to one of these. They've all got their own colour. And essentially, what you're looking at here is... if you take it back to the Mayan calendar, and you've got the 26,000 year cycle, and essentially the Mayans believed that within that cycle there was 5 separate cycles, so 5,150 years. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But basically they stated that at the end of each world, a particular one of the 5 elements destroyed that world and then created it again. You know, it restarted itself.
Indeed.
So there's like 4 destructions and moving into another cycle of sorts.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this, and there's one, the blue character, which is the last ring in the Olympic logo. The blue character is symbolic for water. It's called Baby. It's a weird little critter. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's symbolic for water, strong in water sports, and she reflects the blue Olympic ring. And this is the only of the 5 characters that's got a spiritual third eye.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, why has this got a spiritual third eye? And then you think about this Diana's ring of water, and then you think about this spiritual third eye in the mascot, and you think of water obviously is symbolic for Aquarius. There's this idea that we're moving into this blue ring of the Olympics, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, to explain this better, those Olympic rings for me are the 5 cycles of time from the Mayan calendar. Only one's connected to another. And it's almost like there's the transition stage where the two rings meet up. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
And so when, for instance, you've got a set of films like by J.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings, what it really means is the Lord of the Cycles of Time.
Yeah.
Right. And so then when you think about the trilogy, you had the Fellowship of the Ring, which incidentally opens up with Gandalf's birthday on the 111th birthday, 111, which is obviously a pyramid number. You've got Fellowship of the Ring moving into the Two Towers. Sounds symbolic to World Trade Center, if you like.
Yeah.
Moving into Return of the King. Same thing. They're on about buying us into another messianic prophecy. So, do you know what I'm saying about this symbolically ring cycle thing? It's all basically insinuating that throughout the cycles of time, something has had control of everything. And what I'm trying to propose is that when, for instance, in Egypt, they pretty much know that the Grand Pyramid, the Great Pyramid, started fully formed as such, and then the Egyptian civilization went into decline from there and after. All the pyramids that followed it were in like disrepair. They don't stand the test of time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And obviously, everyone believes that before that, there was obviously the Great Flood of sorts. Potential like the Great Flood, which essentially came after the destruction of Atlantis. So I don't know too much about Atlantis myself, except it's supposed to be a highly technological, civilization of sorts.
Indeed.
But if you think about these cycles of time, Atlantis was destroyed. The same power structure, whatever, managed to survive it anyhow because they had the technology to survive it, and then they restarted again straight with the pyramid back into the next cycle.
Well, there you go, and I think that's an extremely interesting point because to some extent we can say that we are in kind of that technological advancement, as it were, right now, and we're also kind of approaching it. It's the speed up of the thing, and it's like, we're going to be like at the peak of our civilization, as it were, whatever we want to call it. And I think basically at the same time as everything is, the technological singularity, call it what you will, this kind of the high point of our achievement. At the same time that we actually reach that pinnacle, we could potentially also kind of fall again, so to speak. And this could be a moment, and this might where it'll be around 2012. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I can take this now after this. I've covered the cycles. I could pretty much tell you what the religion of the New World Order is as well.
Okay.
If you want to know that,
I'd love to. Share with us, please.
Well, basically, if you're reading Revelations, chapter 11, verse 12. Now a great sign appeared in heaven: a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. Remember the moon because that's symbolised with Isis. And on her head a garland of 12 stars, like the 12 stars of the EU flag. But basically, in Revelations, it refers to the breaking of the 7 seals. Right. In the Mayan prophecies for Chilam, a high priest, in 1560, there was a prophecy written about the arrival of Christianity and the arrival, this was like the end of the Mayan calendar prophecies of sorts. And he said, there the masters of our souls arrived. There the counties were distributed to their chiefs. There we began to learn the holy faith. There water began to enter our heads. There were laid the foundations of the high church, the palace of God. There the principle of the 7 sacraments were founded. So 7 again, 7 seals in Revelation, 7 sacraments in the main prophecies. And I do Reiki, so I know what there's 7 of, and there's 7 chakras. 7 sacraments, 7 chakras, same word, same thing to me.
Yeah.
And as a confirmation of that, on my blog, there's some more deciphering of imagery. And if you have an issue of the UK passport from 1998, I think that's when mine was issued, there's an image of the rose, the thistle, and the daffodil, which are the flowers of England, Scotland, and Wales. But as I've said, these images have 2 meanings, and they have they have a duality. And this image that no one knows what it is, it's on a page called Reserved for Observations Only, with a number 11 on the page. It's basically showing a diagram of the chakra system. And you can correlate that because basically the heart chakra lines up with an image of a heart, and the solar plexus chakra aligns up with an image of a sun. So So basically, you've got this thing, but even more concerning, or not concerning, on the root chakra and the crown chakra, it's signed with a inverted pentagram.
Mm-hmm. Really?
So so you think about that, there's an inverted pentagram on your crown chakra and your root chakra. Now, I don't know what that's symbolically saying, but it's obviously involving spiritualism.
Yeah.
And if this is in the UK passport, I mean, it's beyond me that our government have ever acknowledged the chakras. I've never known that in my entire life.
Yeah.
But as a further proof to the New World Order religion is going to be based on spirituality, the Tibetan flag. I don't know if you've seen this. I've recently picked this up myself because of all the kerfuffle with the Olympic torch and the Dalai Lama and everything.
Yeah.
Basically, it's become pretty apparent that the Free Tibet movement was funded by the CIA. Because it was a way to rise up against China. But essentially, like, ignoring that, if you look at the Tibetan Buddhist flag, or the Tibetan flag that they used from 1912 to 1950, which is banned by China now, if you look at that, it depicts what is a mountain, but it's not a mountain, it's a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid is a sun. Right? So essentially, you've got a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on the banned Tibetan flag that the Tibetan Buddhists used to represent themselves. So what is that saying about Tibet in 1912 to 1950 when they used that flag? It's almost like it's a blueprint for, the New World Order's religion of sorts, based on meditation, spirituality, chakras, and, all that goes with it.
I mean, I'm looking at a picture of the Tibetan flag right now, and even the fact that there's two, lions, if you will, that is holding up the eternal flame, and even the word itself, if you look at pyramidion or pyramidos, I should say, that's basically fire in the middle. So I mean, they give you the hint right there that this is a pyramid, and then you have the sun in the backdrop. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So
you've got this thing, and I've got a recent picture of the Dalai Lama sat giving a press conference, and his head was aligned perfectly with the back of that sun. And this is where I'm moving to some weird stuff, because obviously this New World Order religion is basically still sun worship, but it's based on spiritual sun worship. It's going to combine Islam and Christianity, and it's through the emergence of Isis and the resurrection of a sun god. This is how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the thing is, obviously, New Age talk, conspiracy theories, and all of this stuff that's put out there, these are low-level distractions and stuff. And obviously, the New Age spirituality movement, it's not a bad thing in itself, but essentially, if you look at where it probably started from something very different to what we expect. Do you know what I mean? This whole moving into the age of Aquarius and the whole New Age stuff.
Well, of course. I mean, I mean, from my point of view, at least at this point, from what I've picked up on so far, this is the reason also for why they are reverting back to all of these, esoteric, some would say even pagan if they come from a Christian background, what have you. But the reason for it is that I think that there is a spiritual truth in many of the methods, so to speak, that they actually use to control people, meaning that there actually is something real to this. And they have known this for a very long time, but they consequently either manipulate people in the other direction, and consequently say that that's all bollocks, don't look at that. We have your religion right here for you. We call it Christianity, what have you. And I consider many of the religions that we have around today basically is a reformation from the oldest ancient religions, going back to the ancient world of Cana, Egypt, what have you, And it doesn't matter in what package they sell it to us. If you're smart enough, you're going to be able to see through that. If you're clouded by too much of the manipulation, that's unfortunate, but in many cases it's people's own choice, and I have nothing against that either,
No, that's of course you can't dictate that at all, can you?
No.
I mean, essentially, like, the thing that I'm trying to get across what I'm trying to say, I mean, I've moved into an area that Matthew Deleuze touches on. I think you've spoken to Matthew Deleuze before. But essentially, for me, the power structure that remained in power, or that started, something that built the pyramid, that got the people to build the pyramid, was a very powerful force. And in the history of, I've got a particular book called The Secret History of the World by Jonathan Black. It's an esoteric secret history of the world. And this particular book states how that since, the early days, we were getting more and more ingrained in matter. Moving, like everyone thinks of evolution in a material sense, but consciousness has equally gone through an evolution, moving from the spirit drawing itself down into material matter over time. And so, for instance, when you listen to the Egyptian stories of Zep Tepi the first time, and the state that the gods ruled the earth, or ruled Egypt, sorry, and then the gods retracted, so they built statues, effigies for people to worship to. And then eventually, after the gods had retracted so much, the pharaohs then ruled the earth for the gods, or ruled Egypt for the gods. And then, essentially, went from statue worship to idol worship into what we're currently at. We're at celebrity star worship.
Well,
pop
there you
idol.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Madonna, all this lot. It's all part of the same thing.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Continue.
But my thing is that obviously the Egyptian power structure that was in place then has never died out. Because if you look at the way the power structure has moved, like essentially when Egypt collapsed, you had the Exodus with Moses and stuff into the area of Israel and Palestine. And then the next major power structure was essentially with Rome. And if you go to Rome, you'll notice that there's Egyptian obelisks in front of the Vatican, in front of the Pantheon and stuff like that. They carried those things over there from Egypt.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Roman Catholics went on the Inquisition, slaughtering out any heretical like religions such as like the Cathars and the Bogomils. Moved through Europe and then essentially found a new power structure to erect in Paris. And obviously Paris has got, it's symbolic for Paradies, if it's already in the word.
Yeah.
But Paris, they moved the obelisks and stuff, Place de la Concorde on the Champs-Élysées alignment.
Yeah.
You got that whole symbolic area. And like when I went there the other day, incidentally, I went to the front of the Louvre, and they've got a aerial viewpoint of the layout of the Louvre, and it's an exact replica of Luxor Temple, with the Avenue of Sphinxes running to Karnak Temple in Egypt, because I've been to the same place and I've recognised this. But there's no official statement anywhere that the Louvre is based on Egyptian temples and alignments and stuff, but it is, obviously.
Of course.
So this power structure, then once it had done in Paris, it decided that it wanted to find the new like centre of power, and it moved to London. And if you go to London, they've got an obelisk and stuff like that. You've got Big Ben. The official story is that Big Ben was named after this politician named Ben, who stood up in Parliament and said, "Oh, let's call it Big Ben," and everyone laughed and said yes.
Yeah.
But it's not called Big Ben because of that. It's named after the Ben stone, which is like one of the very first. It stands proud in Egyptian history.
Of course, and even in Hebrew, Ben is the son of someone, so it's the big son.
Yeah, Yeah, so the Big Ben, for instance, is a huge obelisk type structure right near the obelisk and the London Eye, which is symbolic again for the all-seeing eye.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And then obviously this power structure moved from London to America. And then there we have it. America has been used as an excuse to run all these wars that it's needed to run until it's collapsed itself into the ground, and then America will die. And that's how I see it. America's been used, essentially, and they've used the people there.
Well, and that's also an interesting point. I mean, there's so much to touch upon on that, but just to be brief about it, even the fact that I think that they want that if we talk about America as an experiment, if you will, and much in the same way that we can look at Soviet Russia as an experiment, but or communist Russia, but they might have wanted a certain kind of stock, if you will, of people or a certain type of breed, those who were willing to draw out the roots from their own country and just leave and have a certain type of mentality. And if you take all these different things into account, you end up with a really interesting picture that potentially is showing you that what you're mentioning here, that they wanted to use America for a specific purpose. But anyway, please continue. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if we're going on this premise that this power structure's been there and it's never died out and stuff, and then obviously you start looking at the English words in the language and stuff like that, and we're all connecting back to this idea of Sion, and then you start thinking, essentially, with English words, as I've said, you've got the word television, televi Sion.
Yeah.
So basically, everyone thinks the television is an evil hypnotic machine anyhow, I mean, other than the ones who enjoy it.
Yeah.
But, it's there to televise Sion.
Yeah.
And then you think of the word spiritual ascension, spiritual ascend Sion. It's the same. It's in the words of what we use.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's endemic and it's there. You can't get away from it.
Of course. And vision or Zion, that's even the eye in there,
Yeah.
you know, because it has to do with visualization or to see see something, you know. So
yeah. But this is where like I can start to like wrap this thing up slightly.
Yeah.
Is that if you look at it, it starts becoming apparent that it's more to do with just like, for instance, it's more to do than just someone hijacking a power structure and keeping us like in control. It's almost like it's, you know, to do with material reality itself. It starts to feel like that it's coming from something that's, you know, if you think of us as souls and spirits trapped in matter, then like this is where I'm starting to like perceive things, in the sense of, if you look at all religious figures throughout history, every single one of these illuminated, enlightened figures, every single one of them has a sun behind their heads.
Yeah.
Right. So sun worship. Yeah. Again.
Yeah.
And Christmas, for instance, you can't get away from Christmas. I mean, Matthew Deleuze talks about this stuff, and I recommend listening to Matthew Deleuze, because he's a very intelligent man and he's a very, very special man. But Christmas, obviously, we're all driven into this worship of the sun at Christmas. You can't get away from it. If you've got kids or if you're related to kids, you need to be part of it. You know, we all buy into this Christmas thing. Christmas is sun worship. If you look at the tree that you've got in your living room, you know, it's like the tinsel is a serpent. You've got an all-seeing eye at the top. You've got a bloody pagan tree, you know, pyramid thing that's sat in the corner of your room.
Yeah.
And then Easter, obviously, again, it's more sun worship. And when kids, for instance, are all wanting the Easter eggs and stuff, it's nothing to do with the fact they're eating chocolate. They're buying into a ritual. They're buying into more sun worship, whether you look at it or not.
Yeah.
And the same goes with, like, for instance, crematoriums that haven't got any kind of religion tied to them. If you look at crematoriums, there's sun symbolism at crematoriums. You look at number 10 Downing Street, above the number 10, there's a sun symbol, like above the, you know, the centre of where our Prime Minister resides. You look at Shell Petrol, and it's sun symbolism, you know. And then, for instance, something I found the other day, my UK driving licence, there's a hologram you can barely see, but I shone it in the light. It's a sun and a pyramid on my driving licence in Britain.
Yeah.
You know, something you'd expect on the dollar bill. And so all I can say is that, essentially, with this symbolism, when people don't realise what they're looking at and what they're buying into, this stuff is like taking spiritual energy away from them. I.e., it's, you know, they don't realise what it's doing. I don't know how to really put that into words, but it's like we've only got our five senses, and like we're aware of everything within those five senses. But much like with the, you know, the light spectrum, we're not aware of what microwaves and X-rays and infrared rays and everything are doing. There's stuff we don't understand, and like our five senses are a filter.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that these symbols that have all been like fed with energy from, you know, if it was like a talisman, like they feed the energy from the stars in ancient Egypt, that's how they used to do it. It's working on some level we can't comprehend, that's, you know, basically trapping and deceiving us here all the time.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, in my opinion, when you die and you get these references to people saying, I met Jesus and all this kind of stuff, and they tell you that they met these enlightened beings and everything,
Yeah.
because they're so familiar with this symbolism, because they haven't asked what it's all about or anything like that. It's almost like if you, for instance, meet Jesus when you die and you go with him, and he'll tell you can be a lawyer next time, and he'll send you back around again.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you're encapsulated in this, as the Tibetans believe, and Tibetan is the New World Order religion, in my opinion. They believe in reincarnation, and so the reason why the reincarnation happens is if you're still duped by this symbolism when you go through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to be able to stop, like, you know, believing that this symbolism is here to help you, because it's not. And my opinion is that what's going on is this material reality, whatever we're relating, it's much like the Gnostics believed, and in the sense of the Gnostics believed that there was a creator of the material universe, but they never ever, like, you know, saw their creator as the supreme being or the god, if you like. The creator was a malevolent force of sorts, keeping us all entrapped in this matter, preventing us from being what we really are. And like the Gnostics used to say, when they died and they met the Creator, they used to say, you're not my God,
Yeah.
I'm a Gnostic.
Mm.
And essentially that's when they believed that they had moved on from everything.
Mm.
And it's almost like it's the same principle. I mean, they tried to wipe out the Gnostics, did the Roman Catholics, but it's the same principle. Like people, when this spiritual event happens in 2012, if this spiritual event happens, the obelisks and the pyramids and the symbolism will still be around everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Everyone might be ascended in a spiritual fashion and know about the 7 chakras and stuff like that, but you're still going to be feeding your energy into the same machine.
Of course. What you're talking about here, as far as I can pick up on here, is that you're talking about that you need to become smart, or you need to be able to interpret all of the symbols and what it does to you. Not only that okay, we have sun symbolism everywhere, very good, but what actually does it mean? Where does it lead you, and so forth? And why? In what way are they using it on us? Because in many cases, I can also see that. I mean, if we look at how nature operates, how it exists, how the functions of natures occur, we can understand that the sun, for instance, is one of the most important elements that we have in order to sustain us, keep us alive. So obviously one can understand that there is a veneration for the sun, but how is this being used? And I mean, what you're referring to here also, as far as I can pick up on it, is a little bit of the Buddhist ideology or theme, that we actually are trapped in a kind of illusion, if you will, or the wheel of reincarnation, and that this is something that actually is a trap. To some extent, I don't agree with that idea a little bit, but I understand what you're saying and how a philosophy like that can arise.
If you think about, say, for instance, the film The Matrix. The Matrix had Neo, which is an anagram for the One, had Trinity, had Sion in there, had the whole thing in there.
Of course,
And for instance, when Neo had decided that he wanted to know the truth, and he was no longer wanting to be kept in this illusion, and Morpheus offered him the blue or the red pill, and he took the one to see the truth, obviously. When he woke up, there's a little robot that came up, a machine that came up and looked at him. And then the machine just looked at him and then shot off, right? And you think to yourself, why didn't that machine attack him? And the reason why that machine didn't attack him is because Neo, in the film, basically had seen through everything. He knew the truth and no longer could provide energy for the machines in that pod.
Of course, the machine perceived him as being dead.
Is that how it works?
Well,
I'm getting confused there, maybe.
No. Well, I mean, I understand your point, and you're right, because I mean, the machine took up because they couldn't identify him as being alive, because the fact that he had all his wires cut out from his the nervous system in the back, so the machine could no longer interpret him as being dead or alive, meaning that he's useless to the system, how it operates. So that's why the machine left him alone. That's how I interpreted that scene anyway. But yeah.
Okay, well, my interpretation was that basically there's no point recapturing him to put him back in the sense of, if he was back in there, he wouldn't be feeding any more energy to the system.
Well, I see what you mean, exactly, and that's another good point too. Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, to wrap up if you want to ask me some questions in a minute, to wrap it all up, I mean, as I've spoke about on the mind before matter scale. Basically, I've got this kind of feeling that as we're approaching 2012, we're obviously approaching some kind of new cosmological energy of some sort. Something involving the universe, which is probably far too great for any of us to really comprehend at the moment. But working on the mind before matter idea, basically, I envisage what's going on as we're moving closer to this date and we're getting closer to this energy all the time. Manifestation time between kind of, thoughts and manifestation creating themselves into matter is getting shorter. So do you understand what I'm saying? The spirit, the gap between consciousness and material bodies are closing up, and so eventually we'll be able to create our reality a lot quicker than we currently do.
One quick question there. Do you think that will be of a spiritual, natural, biological means, or do you think it will be a technological, almost down to the nanoscale, creation of things as a means that we have developed machinery, for instance, or tools or robotics that would help us to? What do you think about that?
I hope that it's cosmological.
Right. Yeah.
But basically, I mean, as I'm saying that this is this is happening.
Mm.
If you look at what's going on, for instance, in Indiana Jones, the symbology all over that film for 2012. There's the main calendar. They don't acknowledge it, but he's rocking on the main calendar in that film.
Mm.
There's loads of other stuff that coincide with the main prophecies and stuff. And the same goes is like when I was on my trip down to Paris the other week, and I was driving down the M1 in Britain, and the first motorway service station I got to, I walked to the shop, and I went in there, and there's this big pile of books on offer, and the books that they sell in motorway service stations are terrible. They never give you any knowledge whatsoever, not good for anything, but there's just one book on offer. And I went over to it, and it was a book all about the end of the world in 2012
Really?
on the main motorway of like Britain's motorway in one of the shops, one of the main shops that you get on the service stations.
Mm.
And I've got this feeling that what's going on as we're getting close to this energy, and as we're getting this gap between kind of thought and manifestation of matter is getting shorter. There's a particular force out there that's trying to implicate that 2012 is going to be a huge disaster. And for instance, next year, the man who released Stargate and Independence Day is releasing the film 2012.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the biggest disaster movie on record, going for $200 million. There's plenty of starving people in the world, but we can spend $200 million on this film.
Oh, of course, no problem. Sheesh.
And what this film is going to perpetrate, and everyone on the bloody planet is going to know about 2012 for being a disaster. So if what I'm saying is this idea of a mind before matter situation, if the general population are all believing that 2012 is going to come around and it's going to be a disaster, our consciousness could end up manifesting that for us. And the problem we've got is obviously that the people in power have the technology to survive such a thing, and the general population don't. It's all about the manifestation of a disaster that they're trying to swing their way by putting out this information to the public. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course. One quick question there is, if they're at the same time are trying to put Prince William up as the new Messiah, if you will.
Yeah.
Are they at the same time also trying to destroy everything that they are building up here then around 2012? Well,
the interpretation I've got is that in between this 2008 and 2012, because obviously the two logos contain the word Zion, there's going to be a lot of things happen in between those 4 years. We're not just going to end up with one event. It's going to be a sequence of events continually.
Yeah.
And I believe for anyone to be implemented as king of the world, which I think they're aiming for, you're going to have to touch people, and those people are going to have to have been stretched. Do you know what I mean? They're going to have to be on an emotional knife edge to believe everything that they're seeing.
Yeah.
That's all I can say, is that I do believe that in the run-up, like for instance when you've got Prince Charles beaming himself into the EU via holographic technology,
yeah, there you go.
and stating stuff along the lines of that he knows for a fact that in 18 months' time we're going to have a sequence of mega disasters all around the world. How does that man know that is going to happen?
Did he say that?
Yeah, he did say it. He said it about 2 weeks ago.
Really? No.
Yeah, do a search for Prince Charles, natural disasters, 18 months, and you'll probably find it straight away.
Okay, I will do that. That's very interesting. Okay.
But how does this man know that? Do you know what I mean? It's scary.
Well, he's at the potentially at the top of the pyramid. Who knows?
He's Osiris, isn't he?
Well, exactly. There you go. Exactly, he is. No, I mean this is. There's so many people also that have been looking at Prince William and that come from this from a different angle and so forth. And I mean I definitely see that there's something there. I mean there's incredible stuff going on the symbolical level, and yet I always try to, or rather I kind of move back towards the other perspective of okay, is this something? Is there an archetypal image within civilization of man that right now always kind of strive for the Trinity, and whatever people that are in a position to represent this Trinity are going to be put forth as such, and those who are smart enough to pick up on this can see it? Or is this a totally manipulated thing from day one, going in, this is what we're going to do, and this is where everything leads? What do you think about that?
As far as I'm concerned, we never really chose our royal family. So as far as like people pushing these forwards as these archetypes,
Yeah.
I don't see that because they seem to have claimed this land without any real justification.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So I perceive this as something that's been hijacked.
Hmm. You know
I
what?
mean, obviously, all of this could be at the very least just my creative brain coming up with a
No, no, no,
a
no. I
brilliant
mean,
story.
I think, I mean, I agree with you on one level. I always keep the other door open, but that doesn't mean that I reject either one of the theories. You know, I'm totally
Yeah, yeah,
for with what you're saying here. I mean,
yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it. And you know what? I want to do like this. I want to give you a proposition here, so to speak. I want to have you back on the program, and because
Okay.
we actually have gone through basically 2 hours now, I think that this is a good amount of information for this time. So
Okay, yeah, that's brilliant.
people can digest this a little while. Potentially also send us in questions actually to that we can discuss further some of these questions. I want to give out one email address here and I might give out one more at the end here. But send in questions to redicecreations@gmail.com. Again, that's redicecreations@gmail.com. Send your questions there, and I'll post those to Rick here, and we'll continue discussing this because again I have tons of questions that I want to get through, but I think this is a great time to end things for here. So what do you say,
That's
Rick?
brilliant.
Are we up for a part 2 here in a while?
Yeah, that's fine. No worries. I'm up for that.
Okay, great. Because there's so much more to talk about. But okay, let's begin to round things up here because this has been very interesting, and I think that what you managed to do here also in a way is to kind of take a lot of the material that is out there. There's basically this is the grand, idea of what is happening within one perspective. If you collectively bring in a lot of different research, I don't know how you have come up with a lot of these answers, but I'm certainly familiar with a lot of the concept that you present, and this I would reckon at least are building upon other people's research, like everyone from Jordan Maxwell to as you said Manly P. Hall to Graham Hancock to Matthew Deleuze to there's tons of people out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the first name that he presented, but Graham Hancock, Matthew Deleuze, obviously Ian Crane, and just general reading, Daniel Pinchbeck and stuff.
Of course,
But
I mean, if
it's a culmination of everything, isn't it? It's the way we're all working. We're building up on each other.
exactly, that's right. It's a convergence of information, and I must mention the reason I mentioned Jordan Maxwell, the name that you didn't recognize, is
No.
that a lot of his research is featured in Zeitgeist, and unfortunately, they didn't even mention his name once in that film. I mean,
Really?
no, they've had over 2 million viewers. I mean, so
Cheeky.
probably more so far. And if they just even would pop out his name there, I would be so much more happier. It's a personal hero
Yeah.
of mine, and
I'll
research
take a look.
write up the name Jordan Maxwell and take a look at some of the videos that you're going to find on Video Google and stuff like that,
Brilliant.
because it's brilliant research there, so
Okay.
very good. Okay, let's begin to round things up here for this time, and again send in your questions to redicecreations@gmail.com, and I'm going to write up a ton more of these questions that I do have for you until next time we speak, Rick. Okay, so
Okay, that's fine.
leave us with your blog the address again so we can find more of your research.
Okay, it's www.thecosmicmind.co.uk.
Brilliant. thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. We will talk more soon, and we'll stay with me here, Rick, and we'll talk more off air. Okay.
Okay, cool, brilliant.
Thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Henrik Palmgren. This is Red Eyes Creations Radio. We are coming to you from the west coast of Sweden. Nice to have you along today. You can hear us on Thursdays and Sundays through our website, redeyescreations.com, where we also feature news, links, articles, other resources from around the world and beyond. Also, don't forget, we have a growing member section loaded with material for you. Our full radio archive, of course, with extended interviews with many of our guests, but also videos, short films, articles, and much more. We have Rick Clay back with us on the program today as a follow-up to the two segments that we did this past Sunday. We talked about Sion, the upcoming Olympic Games in Beijing and in London, and how all of this kind of connects with 2012 and leading up to the introduction, if you will, of the new trinity of sorts with the Prince William, or maybe around 2012 King William, as the deity of the religion for the new aeon. And today we're going to follow up on this program and discuss some more things that we didn't get into in so much depth. I have a few questions and comments on what we didn't talk about last time. So if you haven't heard part one, I suggest you go back into our archive, listen, so you know what we're talking about here. And we can preface this show, of course, with saying that Rick is behind the blog The Cosmic Mind. You can find that by simply going to thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. And there you will find many of the articles that we will be addressing in this program. So with that, welcome back to the program, Rick. Glad to have you back again. How is it?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you.
Nice. Did you have a chance to ease down since last Sunday when we talked?
I think my brain exploded, but I've managed to piece it back together again. It was a mammoth session.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, you presented basically the thesis and overall research that you've been doing for the last half year, I guess, here. But very, very fascinating, very interesting. And today we're going to go back to some of the keynotes and talk a little bit more about that. But have you gotten any feedback on the show that we did so far?
I've had some quite positive feedback. There's been people message me on the blog, and I've received some emails as well. Obviously, some that are not in complete agreement with what I've been saying, but that's fair enough, because I'm not saying that this is gospel or anything. I'm just saying this is how I see it. Yeah, of course. What is the disagreements about mainly? I'm not sure. I mean, from what I gather, some of the messages are kind of coming much from the matter before mind scientific viewpoint, as opposed to the alternate viewpoint the mind before matter situation. Yeah, that's interesting, because I think I read on your blog a little bit about that, and I think it was in regards to numerology that there are kind of specific rules that you have to follow and whatnot, but from what I can kind of pick out on all of this so far is that this is not about so much rules and a discipline in that sense. This is more about actually this is stuff that speaks to the subconscious. This is stuff that triggers the right brain, if you will, and not the analytical left brain. So completely. So in a way, this is not about just sticking to certain rules. It's about just pointing out what it is that you're discovering, right? Yeah, exactly. Someone had proposed that the method to numerology is just simply to add the numbers up as you go along, and obviously there probably is a set method to numerology which I might not be familiar with, but all I can say is that this is different in the sense this is numbers in the universe, and there is number play from specific people as well. But it doesn't abide to any particular rule. That's the thing. It's as they wish to present it. Yeah, exactly. Or as whoever wishes to present it. Well, exactly, and even the idea of if we think of the universe or creation as a holographic thing or a fractal thing, in a way, then it actually doesn't matter what area you look into or how you make the connections. In a way, this is just about if you're have the consciousness to discover the connections or the similarities, then that's the pattern. That is the the discovery right there. Yeah, it is something at the root of consciousness. That's how that's all I see it as. It's there, permeates everything. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I want to begin to talk a little bit more about the Olympics and ask you a little bit about
basically why you think that the Olympic Games is such an important event, or rather, why they have made the Olympic Games such an important event. Any ideas or theories about that?
Well, I mean, obviously the Olympics, it stems back thousands of years, and it started off as a pagan games, if you like, where all the athletes and stuff would pay their respects to Zeus and Olympus, and obviously it seemed to like through the ages and stuff it died out, and then there was the resurrection. I can't particularly remember the man who started the modern Olympic Games, but again it was a Freemason, esoteric worker of sorts, and obviously wanted to bring them back. and with the 2012 Olympics, obviously we've got and obviously what I've discovered with the ley lines and stuff where the particular site is, we've got this situation where it's clearly involving energy.
Indeed. And one thing here that is interesting, you mentioned the Greek background on all this, and of course there is a connection between, if we go back to the Roman world, that connects with the Grecian world, and then we can go back to the Egyptian world, or the Phoenician or Canaanite or what have you, basically there, or even the Druid or Celtic religion. But
yeah, of course.
One interesting article that actually picked up on this was from The Guardian back in 2006 in May, called "Greek Gods Prepare for Comeback," and the beginning of the article stated that it has taken almost 2,000 years, but those who worship the 12 gods of the ancient Greece have finally triumphed, and Athens' court has ordered that the adulation of Zeus, Hera, Hermes, Athena, and the company is to be unbanned, paving the way for a comeback of pagans on Mount Olympus. So I mean that's pretty interesting, considering what we're talking about. Yeah.
It's a bit like the opening ceremony itself. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it this year, but obviously the opening ceremony involves 11 women that are all like dressed up like snake charmers as sorts, and they actually light the Olympic flame with the sun. They get a parabolic mirror and light the flame. It's all involving the sun and the stars, and as it is in a pagan religion, they're personified as gods.
Ah, exactly, and that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because the origins of the Olympic flame. I mean, that's very interesting. Why that is. I mean, to a certain degree, I draw that back to the Promethean mythology of actually stealing the fire from the gods, or taking the knowledge from the gods and then utilizing that in the human world. What's your idea about the flame?
Well, I think, evident from the Olympic torch relay, it's clearly some kind of ritual. If you, for instance, observe where the Olympic torch is run, for instance, in Paris, the Olympic torch took a route down the Champs-Élysées, down the energy line, straight forward towards the Louvre Pyramid. And then same situation in London. It did the torch did a visitation of all the significant sites in London associated with the obelisks and the London Eye and the Natural History Museum. And then if you, for instance, look where it's going to end up, on June the 21st, which is the summer solstice this year, the torch is going to be running through Lhasa in Tibet.
There you go, yeah.
So, given the commotion around the Free Tibet and the Tibetan uprisings and everything that's gone with it with China, it's quite coincidental that they should be taking the torch to Tibet on the summer solstice.
That's very interesting, and exactly, they have these sort of. I have not actually kept up with that much with what's going on over there right now, but they had this called the Saffron Revolution, I guess it was referred to, and. It seems to be, at least, I don't know if you're familiar with the research of Goro Adachi over at Etemenanke, but he has kind of tracked this with the different type of revolutions that have been going on in the last few years, like the Orange Revolution, in Ukraine. I think you had the Rose Revolution in Georgia. So there's something definitely going on there in regards to different revolution and how energy, to a certain extent, is being used. Well,
in the I've got my suspicions about the whole event in Burma, for instance, with the monks. The moment you see George Bush on TV speaking about democracy while they're in Iraq, basically drilling on the monks to keep with the protests and stuff. There's something very strange going on with our leaders and this connection with spiritual leaders and the spirit itself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, continue.
Yeah, sorry, that's it.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, I wanted to address also the Dalai Lama a little bit, because he seems to be a very how should we put it, eclectic character. He doesn't seem to abide by the rules of the old Dalai Lamas in a way,
well,
you know?
He's a very suspicious chap. 'Cause first of all, he laughs like Yoda from Star Wars. But aside from that, I dug up a recent picture of him, and as I mentioned about the Tibetan flag before, obviously showing the pyramid and the sun, or the mountain as the sun, as they put it. And there's a picture himself of the Dalai Lama, and he's been placed on a plateau and in his head is directly in line with the sun, and obviously, this is sun worship personified in the Dalai Lama. Like that's the energy's being thrown his way essentially. And then, for instance, you look at that particular character and his visit to the UK. I mean, he made an 11-day visit to the UK, and as I talk about the significance of the number 11 before, those numbers are there in what's going on with all of this.
Definitely, and the Dalai Lama has advocated microchipping. I remember an article a while back, and apparently he's suggested, or maybe it was a comment by someone who asked him, and he wouldn't seem that would be any problem. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a lot of this stuff going on, and even going back to the Saffron Revolution, or the different revolutions that have been ongoing, it's also interesting that a lot of the whole other world are getting involved in those kinds of revolutions too. I remember a while back, everyone was wearing this, the red ribbon or whatever it might be. It's always to get you involved in what is going on, and to kind of put energy into the system. Do you think that's a consciously manipulated thing behind the scenes, that okay, let's utilize this situation and actually feed energy into this spot or into this event? Do you think that's possible?
I think that's definitely happening. I mean, this touches into areas that Matthew Deleuze again is quite famous for. But for instance, if you look in Britain during the winter time, and you observe your central cities like Manchester, Leeds, London, they always bring out the ice skating rinks, and the ice skating rinks are always between obelisks. Do you know what I mean? It's by the symbolic events and stuff, and they draw people into these events, like you say, with the revolutions and stuff. Same with music festivals, same with like New Year's Eve celebrations. They're always drawing people into these events, to these areas, and obviously feeding energy off it.
And I mean, you mentioned energy. Do you think that this also is an opportunity then to affect the mass consciousness in a big way? I mean, if we go back to the Olympics, there we have, of course, a lot of people both attending the event, of course, but also watching it through TV.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. The Olympics 2012, I mean, for me, is going to be and it already has started being, is going to be this, it's one of the biggest energetic events that we'll ever have seen, I think. It's going to be grand.
And
it's going to be very grand.
I don't know if you've heard of Tim Rifat, but I had a clip of him up on the website it was a few years ago now, I actually think, but he talked about the new digital system going in also with the new signals of the TV,
Yeah, I've heard about this, some new form of interactivity and everything that goes with it, microchips and a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's quite. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things. For instance, they keep putting suspect message out about just everything associated with it, like Gordon Brown and his mention of that by 2012. And if you remember my talk last time, I was talking about the water ring and moving into the age of the water spirit kind of.
Age of Aquarius, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, Gordon Brown made a mention the other day that by 2012, the people of the UK will have free swimming for all. No, I mean, I've never heard anything so sus in my life, given what I'd been researching at the time.
Yeah.
Like, never declaration of free swimming for everyone. I don't know what
Well,
that insinuates, but
well, I mean, obviously that draws the mind towards the idea of global warming,
mm,
increased water, and London submerged, halfway underwater or whatever. I don't know
no,
what that
I
might
don't know
mean.
what that brings up, to be honest either. It's interesting though.
It's very interesting, and even the use of water, or if we look on global warming, that this is much about flooding, the ice melting. In a way, the symbolic message here is that our planet is entering the age of water, or age of
Yeah,
Aquarius, because we're being
yeah,
drowned, in a
yeah,
way.
definitely. I mean, that's the thing you always have to wonder about. For instance, with what I spoke about before, saying that the religion of the New World Order as such is going to be like a new religion based on spirituality, but obviously with a sun worship personified in man, so it's like a new messiah.
Yeah.
And you've got to wonder, like, how does this supposed spiritual ascension go about? I mean, does it necessarily mean that we stay in this 3D material plane? I mean, it could be that the whole, planet is suffered with a huge water chaos. You never know.
Yeah.
I
Of
mean, that
course.
could be the method of ascension. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, and obviously we don't really know what's gonna happen as such.
So what you're saying is that whatever happens, even if that is manipulated, I mean, it still potentially means the same thing in the end, because we're gonna go through that experience no matter what, and we're gonna. Well, I mean, what I'm getting at, I guess, is that many people who look at what's going on say, okay, it's manipulated, this is all a fraud or whatever, but
Mm.
it might still be a way for the universe, if you will, to have us to have, to get us to have that experience.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I am under I mean, my personal kind of opinion on all of this is that there is evidence that this has been manipulated, but then there is evidence though that maybe it's not been manipulated. Maybe this information has just been kept from us, and they've known this information, and they're just not willing to share it with us.
Yeah.
And for instance, you look at what I was saying about Prince William, for instance, and him being the figurehead of this new religion. I mean, I have no idea how they could actually make it so that Prince William was born on the 21st of June.
I've heard about that, and I think that they went through some kind of. I know that there were planning involved in some way, and that they
Was
also, they also tried to really. I don't know the technique or even the terminology behind this
Right.
in English, but I know that there were some kind of technique involved into actually delaying or postponing, depending on how
Oh,
far
right.
Diana was
So,
in the pregnancy.
so it was planned then, essentially,
I
if
think
that
it,
information's out there.
I think it was planned, yes, to
Right.
get it on that date.
I've not looked into it that far, as his birth and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, maybe it can be done.
exactly.
Mm.
And
That could lead me on to. I mean, would you like me to tell you about my findings today?
do that, please. Go
Right,
ahead.
because obviously I'd already stated that the 2012 Olympics is the XXX Olympiad,
Mm.
and it's obviously the 30th Olympiad. And Prince William's birthday is the 21st of June, and on that day in 2012 he is 30, which is essentially XXX yet again. And basically, looking for a new bit of information to come on the show, I decided that I was going to try and crack this XXX code, if you like.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've I've dug something up quite interesting. Basically, X is derived from a Greek letter, which is chi.
Mm-hmm.
Chi is the 22nd letter of the Greek alphabet.
Yeah.
So 22 obviously could be 1111 if you wanted it to be like that.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you know anything about the history of Qi, obviously in Chinese and Japanese it's Qi, which is essentially like Reiki, life force energy. It's a spirit. It's the name for spirit, the energy that moves the life of the planet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so looking into this a bit further, on the Wikipedia page, you didn't believe it, but there's a reference to Plato, and obviously Plato, we don't really know too much about him apart from he was an esoteric philosopher. And he refers to chi or X. I mean, chi does look like X. It's the same thing as the soul of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you've got here is the soul of the world, translated in Latin, is anima mundi.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, that's the term for it, anima mundi. That's what Plato is referring to, which is the world soul.
Yeah.
Which is also Gaia. The Gaia Earth theory, the living Earth and Mother Goddess. And Gaia can be identified with Isis.
Mm.
So Plato refers to X as anima mundi, which is essentially identified with Isis. And then you can also look into X again, and it's used to abbreviate the name of Christ in Christmas.
Mm.
So you have Xmas when you're writing down Xmas.
Yeah.
And then so essentially what you've got there is you've got Isis, and you've got your sun figure or your Horus figure. You've got your Isis.
Mm.
If you want to try and attribute X to God or to the Father, in human genetics, the male creates the X chromosome.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So essentially, with the XXX, you've got the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
But it's all male then. It's all masculine, right?
Well, not really, not necessarily, because
Okay.
one of the X's is Isis,
Mm.
the Holy Spirit.
Oh yeah. Okay. I see what you
know,
mean.
the same Isis can be identified with Angel Gabriel. Angel Gabriel identified with the Holy Spirit.
Mm.
Holy Spirit, yeah. So basically, yeah, you've got a trinity there in the words XXX itself.
Hmm.
Then if you look into it even further, because obviously the Chinese equivalent of it is qi, meaning X in Chinese and stuff. But the word, or the area of where the optic vision crosses over is the optic chiasm, which is obviously it got its name from the X because basically eyesight crosses over and forms an X inside your brain.
Yeah.
But incidentally, where the where your two like lines of sight cross over is where the pineal gland resides.
Hmm.
So basically, what you've got in the X as well is this connection to the pineal gland. The term for spirit, Chinese spirituality, and then you've got obviously your Trinity as well, and obviously your pineal gland's connected to your serotonin, melatonin, and DMT secretion, which is supposedly the spirit molecule.
X marks the spot, right?
X marks the spot in the human brain.
Wow, that's really interesting actually, and the vision is really interesting too. Actually, that it's a reverse, and even of course if you unfold or basically X in itself is an 11, but two ones crossed over,
Yeah. I mean, it's new research that for me today, so that's why I've struggled a bit in getting it across. But for instance, if you look at what people stereotypically do on a greetings card or a birthday card, they put 3 crosses at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Kiss, kiss, kiss.
Yeah.
And then if you think about the word kiss itself, it's ki, which is derived from the same word spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 S's, which are snakes, like the DNA coil.
Of course, interesting.
So kiss, kiss, kiss. When everyone's doing that on their Christmas cards, I don't know what they're exactly doing.
Exactly. No, that's very interesting, and this also a little bit goes back to the I think it was Constantine, the Roman emperor, who developed the or saw rather the sign in the sky, the Chi Rho or the XP, in the sign Conquer. That's also connected with the X, of course.
Right. Okay, I'm not aware of that. But.
And it's it's a whole story behind the XP and even Windows XPs. There are a few researchers out there that goes into that.
There's bound to be something behind that one.
Yeah, exactly. They managed to conquer the entire market, as it were, almost on the operating system through XP, conquering in the sign.
Interestingly enough, talking about what I was saying about the religion of the New World Order and utilising the chakras and everything, the Windows, the new version of Windows that they're working on, which they're probably due to release in 2012, is Windows 7, which is obviously significant to the 7 chakras as well.
That's interesting.
Talking about Windows.
Do you know if 7 is their the working name for it only?
They've not given it any other name apart from 7 at the moment.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I know the Vista was called like Longhorn or something in the beginning. It's pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
XP was called Whistler or whatever it was, but
Whistler, yeah.
Anyway, okay. So Fredrik brought me a few notes here. It's pretty interesting about the Berlin Olympics, 1936. The first kind of
Yeah, that's where the Olympic torch relay started, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They managed to televise it, I think, for the first time ever. There's a whole stuff involved there. The Nazis, fascist background to all of this, of course, is very interesting. And apparently,
do you know what number games it was?
The 11th, of course.
Yeah, of course.
X1, exactly. So what do we make of this?
It gets stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't get ridiculous.
It's incredible. No, it's very interesting. And let's see here. I did want to get into a little bit about the whole kind of Templar thing going on there, but let's see. But before we do that, I want to ask you a little bit about Sion. A few comments about this. Okay. That the biblical connection, if you will, the use of biblical terminology, the theme. If you looked at the site in London that they're pulling together. Why do you think it is that they always refer back to the Bible and the biblical theme all the time? Why do you think that's important for them?
Well, I mean, I personally think that the work with the Bible is essentially, if you want to call it, an esoteric book that essentially depicted the plan. I think it's one of those things, like everything, it has to be in plain sight for it to, really work. And that's all I can really attribute it with. I mean, I'm sure that the same people who are responsible for, the same force that's responsible for empowering these 2012 Olympics are the same force that was behind the Bible.
So it's a long
continuous line.
Right. And
I think it's been unbroken since the pyramid was built. To be honest, the Great Pyramid.
Are you talking about the bloodline or the power structure?
I think both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, I do personally think both. I think, if when you're taught history in school, you're always taught like the individual little sections of history and all these different events and stuff. But it's even mentioned in your stereotypical esoteric book where they're referring to how it works. Essentially, is that you have to view history as a whole, not as an individual, like separate parts.
Yeah.
If you view it as a whole, then you'll get an understanding for it.
Indeed, I totally agree. And I mean, continuing on that line, I just want to make a few comments regarding the whole Templar bloodline thing. We got into that a little bit, of course, in regards to that the when they potentially are producing or presenting this new Trinity, the new Holy Trinity with Prince William at the top, or King William. That they're also at the same time potentially are going to lay out this idea that the Windsors or this family line is the family line of Jesus. Then we get into the whole bloodline Templar story here. And
I mean, I think essentially it had to come through Diana, though. Was it something to do with the House of Stuart? I think that's where the essential bloodline crossover came from.
Yeah.
I think they wanted to, from what I gather, they wanted to, merge the Stuart bloodline into the Windsor bloodline.
Yeah. And with that merging, they get this. I mean, and again, you mentioned this the last time we talked that in many cases it's common throughout history also to merge different dynasties in order to, in some cases, gain bigger empires. I mean, Ralph Ellis has talked about this, and one example we can talk about. As a comparison to, let's say, Diana and Charleston would be actually like Cleopatra and Julius Caesar, one coming from the Egyptian dynasty and one from the Roman Empire. But when these two get together, the empire expands, it's become bigger, and it's accepted by both sides as well, So it's a means to propel forth a new world order, basically, in that idea, or a one world order,
Consumes everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And continuing then on that thread that I was mentioning regarding the bloodline there, that do you think it's possible also now that we could be witnessing then the Reformation, if you will, of the Vatican invented religions? In this, of course, we can incorporate the Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, and Anglican Church. And Also, furthermore, I mean, the Templars have been embraced now again back into the Vatican after like 700 years of being excommunicated. The Orthodox Church has also been observed by the Vatican, and some people even claim that Islam is a creation of the Vatican. So what we're potentially are seeing now, and I don't know if you agree or not, you can comment on this if you want to, that what we're seeing is kind of the grand unification again of the church, going back to this one uno, the monotheistic, mono-religion type thing going on here. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I mean, given what the Vatican recently said about extraterrestrials as well, it seems that they're obviously trying to get everything to fit the bill as such.
Indeed.
If you know what I mean, it's whereas before it was always thought that if extraterrestrials were to arrive, it would throw religion up in arms, which was the given story in the 90s, from what I gather.
Yeah.
It's now being spread as, well, no, it wouldn't do that. It'd reaffirm everything that we've said.
Well, exactly.
I mean, as far as the Vatican is concerned and the Roman Catholics concerned, I've got very strong views in the sense of one of the Ten Commandments is "Thou shalt not kill," and yet that religion alone has personally, killed hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely disgusted of what I read that they were doing in the in the time of the Inquisitions. Essentially, it was horrible, disturbing.
Of course, and if we look at the research of Eric Phelps, for instance, behind the book Vatican Assassins, we potentially can see clear connections to even all the wars, essentially. That's what he's talking about. I mean, First World War, Second World War. If we look at the involvement of the Roman Catholic Order of the Knights of Malta, then we know that people there are currently involved or have been involved in the invasion of Iraq. People at the top of Blackwater, for instance, that is the private mercenary army over there, has connections to all of this. I mean, it's what we have to ask ourselves in that extent is, okay, are these really kind of rogue, personalities, or a small faction just involved in these kinds of war for personal gain in regards to profit from wars, or is this a totally different thing going on here, going back to thousands of years into the religious structures and orders, and there might be a totally different reason for why them wanting to be in this region at this particular time,
Yeah, completely. I mean, I've got my doubts as to, for instance, why they're in Iraq. I don't think it's for anything to do with the oil, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got no personal answer as to what it could be, but I just don't think it's about the oil.
Some people talk about the, basically the return of the quote gods, unquote. That the
Anunnaki,
the Nephilim, the Watchers, what have you, is in some way returning, or even that this is a symbolic communication to them.
Planet X.
Well, exactly, Planet X. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
So I mean, it's. The thing is obviously wide open here, and what we're doing here is just kind of speculating and tossing around a lot of these different ideas. Yet again, if we go back to a kind of mundane and worldly thing like the Olympics, it seems to be a long stretch between these different things. And I mean, for someone who kind of don't get the idea of why the Olympics would be important in relations to this, I mean, what would you say to a person like that? Like, okay, you got to obviously do a lot of research, but is there an easy way to lay this forth for a person like that to look at the Olympics?
Well, for someone who, sorry, I'm misinterpreting your question. I think, could you repeat it?
Of course, yeah. What I'm asking is for someone to make a connection between a mundane thing, as it were, as the Olympics.
Right. Okay.
And a huge area like this, the return of the gods, the Watchers, the Nephilim, what have you.
Okay.
Is there an easy path between these subjects?
Is there an easy path?
Yeah,
well, there isn't a three-word answer.
Yeah, okay.
It obviously takes a lot of interpretation. It takes a lot of time studying and stuff, and
of course,
for someone who's the uninitiated into doing any reading or research themselves, it's going to be a difficult thing to propose that, and it seems wild. I mean, I've said my theories on the Olympics 2012 to the uninitiated, and you should see their eyebrows raised. it's not an easy one. It takes a good 20 minutes, to be honest, to even
Well,
begin to get an understanding going on.
well, obviously, and I know that my question there is kind of stupid in one extent, but in many cases it's that kind of instant gratification, so to speak, that some people want when they are researching this stuff. They don't realize that, okay, you actually have to spend a little time and energy to realize this. This isn't just a quick soundbite that you can use to wrap your head around. What we're talking about here is world history, extending thousands of years,
Yeah, I mean, talking about the Anunnaki, as I was mentioning before, there's some real clear-cut connections to everything that is probably to do with the Olympics 2012 in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Have you seen the film yourself?
Not yet, no.
Right, because obviously these Hollywood films that we obviously get published, we never really know who the scriptwriters are for a start. We obviously know the directors and stuff, and the names attributed to scriptwriters, but we never really know who they are. And incidentally, do you ever know how many films have won 11 Oscars? There's only 3 films in history that have won 11 Oscars.
Okay, let me guess. Lord of the Rings?
Return of the King, yeah.
Okay, the Return of the King. Okay, well, this is difficult. What more can it be? Probably like Titanic or something?
Yeah, you got Titanic, another conspiracy theory film there.
Yeah. And then 2001 Space Odyssey.
Now, Ben-Hur, which is all about Jesus Christ.
Ah, really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Charlton Heston. But basically, yeah, it's obviously coincidental. Is it coincidental that there are only 3 films with 11 Oscars, which make 33, obviously?
Yeah, of course. Huh.
And then, I mean, when it comes to Indiana Jones, as I was saying, I was in London about 2 months ago, and there's 3 red buses that were advertising films that were going around, and this 2012 stuff is starting to permeate everything, because of all the films that could have been on these buses, there was only 3 of them. One of them was Indiana Jones, which is released on May the 22nd, which was 11/11. The other one was I Am Legend, which was set in 2012. If you remember that film.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, was it really set in 2012?
Yeah, it's set in 2012.
Oh, shit, I missed that totally. Yeah. That's very interesting. Okay, yeah.
And then the third film was The Eye. Right, so basically, while I was in London, there's only 3 films advertised on these red buses, and it was those 3 films.
Yeah.
So obviously it's very sus. And I was over at the Bank of England, taking a good look at the coiled snakes on the door. Yeah. And basically there's an underpass, and I started seeing it as soon as I went through all these other underpasses. But basically there's these video screens, and they all had Indiana Jones on them. But incidentally, basically at the end of each of these scenes, these video screens, rather than just like doing a scene swipe, the scene was cleared by the Mayan Aztec solar discs rolling across the screen.
Really?
So basically all around the London Underground and all these screens was the Mayan calendar rolling around. But no public admittance that this is the Mayan calendar or anything.
Of course.
But incidentally as well, all of these screens are newly put in place screens, and they all had the CBS logo on them, which is of course an eye.
Yeah.
So basically you had this weird thing going on in London when I went down, which obviously got me thinking about Indiana Jones, because I was adamant that there's going to be so much messagery in that film, so many messages in that film, because of the amount of publicity that's been getting.
Of course.
And I mean, just a few things I've got them jotted down here, which I'm eventually going to be writing a big post about, because I think it warrants one, just like The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
But basically, there's 2 scenes in the film where you'll see the Mayan calendar. It's not put on show, or it's not mentioned or anything. But there's a scene where Indiana is seen rocking on the Mayan calendar in one of these booby trap areas, and at the end of the film, he's stood on it where there's 9 aliens all in a circle. But basically, if you start looking at this film and the messages in it, for instance, there's a scene where Indiana Jones is on the search for the crystal skull, the alien crystal skull, and it turns out that the crystal skull is with a man called Orion, right? And so Orion sounds quite similar to Orion.
No.
Yeah. But incidentally, Orion has six men with him. Basically, these are the guardians of the crystal skull.
Yeah.
And obviously, 6 men plus Orion makes 7, and the 7 stars in Orion's belt. 7 stars in the constellation of Orion.
There you go.
And incidentally, the guardian of the skull, Orion, when Indiana pulls him forward, is what looks like a human being, but he's got a third eye in the middle of his forehead. So obviously there's something symbolic going on there. But incidentally, you look into it further, and you'll realise that the whole film is essentially the journey of the Trinity. And basically, the characters you've got Indiana Jones, and if you think my hypotheses of Diana being Isis, you've got Indiana.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially the Holy Ghost. Is the Holy Ghost? You know, like the angel Gabriel touches the woman or whatever.
Yeah.
And Indiana's partner, who he makes his son with, is Mary Williams. So you've got the name Mary for the mother. Right, and then the other person riding with him is this is the guy who goes crazy, because he's got the crystal skull for a certain amount of time. But he's a chap called Ox from England, and funnily enough, Isis was always accompanied by an ox. Right,
yeah.
But then the actual Indiana and Mary's son is called Williams.
There we go. Isn't that nice?
So basically, in this film, you've got this. There's four of them, but it's a trinity because Indiana himself represents the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost, if you want to call it that, and he's the one who impregnates Mary Williams. But I mean, it gets even weirder in the sense of there's a scene where Indiana Jones falls into the mud, for instance, and Williams, the son, chucks a serpent rope to him. It's a live snake, but uses it as a serpent rope, and obviously the serpent rope is in Mayan prophecies.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got this thing going all the way through it, and basically there's a scene where, at the start of the film, where on the search, these communists and Indiana are on the search for an alien in a box, and they find this box, and on the box is an X. It's obviously referencing Planet X. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, that film. It's got so much like symbolism in it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you look into Indiana as a state as well in America, you'll find that Indiana has the Olympic flame as its logo, as its flag, with stars going around it. It gets weird as well. I discovered something about Audi cars the other day. For instance, if you think about Audi and they've got the four rings, like the Olympic rings.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Audi, Au is with in French, so Audi is with die. And it's as far as it's like, you know, this the four rings is in the fourth circle. We're with die. You could read it like that. You don't have to.
Of course, yeah. Audi, yeah, that's very interesting.
It permeates everything.
Very interesting. You know, and I want to just go back a little bit to the just because there are a few very interesting connections along the line here, because you mentioned that Ben-Hur got 11 Oscars, right?
Yeah.
Charlton Heston is involved in that one, and what is the the previous version of I Am Legend? That's the Omega Man. Have you seen that?
I've not seen that. I'm not aware of that film now.
Take a look at that. That's Charlton Heston in there, and especially
Omega points.
Yeah, of course, and Omega, of course, that goes back to Time or Chronos or even Saturn or the Lord. You know, Omega, the Time Lord. But anyway. Look at some of the symbolism in regards to enlightenment that this man represents there, in regards to that he is the man from the light, and everyone else, the profane, the unenlightened are darkened, they can only go out at night, etc. It's a very ancient theme running throughout the movie, but especially at the end. And look at the importance of when he lies in this pool of water at the cross with his arms stretched out, and the one thing that saves the rest of the civilization is this man's blood. I mean, it's incredible. The Christ symbolism in some of those movies with Charlton Heston even are incredible. There's another one, The Man from Khartoum or something, that constantly referred to Charlton Heston as the Christ in that movie, basically. You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because talking about films, it's obvious that a particular role one person will play is continued in other roles down the line.
Yeah, of
Do you know
course.
what I mean? In the way that Hollywood works. For instance, like this chap in Indiana Jones, for instance, who's called Ox, which is a symbol for Osiris, who travels with Isis in the car in Indiana Jones. It's John Hurt, and obviously the personifying John Hurt as Osiris in this film. And yet, if you think back in time to the very first Alien film, it was John Hurt who gave birth to the alien, if you want to call it that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's and obviously the connections with Orion and stuff. It's all pretty, it's all tangled.
Of course, in John Hurt, he was the man subjected to all the terror in 1984.
1984, yeah, definitely.
And after that film, of course, he pops up as I guess we could call it the mind controller, brain controller, you're one who turned over to the other side in V for Vendetta as the dark, lord of that political party there,
Yeah, definitely.
So it's very interesting, and Jake Coetzee obviously has gone into a lot of this, what he calls composite characters, and there's a whole story there that he's brought out some very interesting connections in regards to how some of these actors are indeed involved in the roles that they're playing, So.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. I mean, like for instance, you can. This is the nature of the work I do. Basically, I'm essentially an internet researcher who makes the connections, and I go looking for them essentially.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, for instance, the whole idea of Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, of course.
Released by Serge Monast. They make a mention to the idea that holographic technology is going to be used as part of projecting imagery onto the upper ionosphere of the planet of sorts or into the sky.
Just for those who don't know, give us a small caption of Project Blue Book for those who don't know.
Project Bluebeam. It was it's essentially a
Bluebeam.
It was
Bluebeam. Sorry, yeah.
It was research that was released by Serge Monast in the 1990s. Incidentally, a few weeks after he released the information, he died mysteriously of a heart attack. But basically, Project Bluebeam is essentially the idea that there was going to hoax something on the size of a biblical second coming, and it'll start off with an engineered financial crash. And it was going to end up spiraling into environmental problems, hoax discoveries around the world that throw religion into contradiction, like, for instance, the lost tomb of Jesus. And then from that, it was going to essentially get to the point where people were hearing the voice of God in each other's heads. So, for instance, you talk about suicide bombers who are saying they've been hearing the voice of God. Is this technology that's doing this stuff?
Yeah.
But basically... they're referring to hearing the voice of God in one's head, and then to top it all off, they were going to, project massive imagery or whatever you want to call it onto the upper ionosphere of the Earth to, essentially recreate something on the scale of a biblical second coming or an alien invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long document, and you can find it on the internet if you search for it, and you'll find that a lot of what's written, and I think it was written back in 1992, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is essentially coming true. There's a lot of it on there that you could put a tally next to. But basically, as I was saying, going into the Project Bluebeam stuff, and you start thinking to yourself, have they got the technology to do this, to do what they say they're going to do? And for instance, this is just like one angle. There's multiple angles where I've found weird synchronicities. But for instance, if you look into 3D holographic technology, and I basically discovered that the very first public display of 3D holographic technology was in the worldwide stage production of War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you remember that War of the Worlds, this was going around all the arenas in the world, essentially, like Australia, in Britain, in America.
Mm-hmm.
But War of the Worlds was obviously read out on the radio in the very early 1900s. And the population of England believed that an alien invasion was actually taking place when it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it's basically, a false flag alien invasion, if you want to call it that, when it was read over the radio.
Mm.
But basically, I started looking into, for instance, who were they actually, turning into a hologram during this War of the Worlds stage show. And basically, this, the very first public demonstration of 3D holographic technology in the War of the Worlds, and they were using the actor Richard Burton to do this. And I don't know if you know about Richard Burton, but Richard Burton was also one of the main characters in the film 1984.
Really? No.
So do you know what I mean? You can draw this lineage from the very first use of public holographic technology to the film 1984 and to War of the Worlds.
Sorry to interrupt. I just got to mention also that because we were talking about Cleopatra and Caesar before, and Richard Burton actually plays the role of Marcus Antonius or Mark Antony in Cleopatra, the movie. But anyway,
right.
interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
incidentally, like for instance, if you was looking into the idea of have they got the technology to beam the voice of God into someone's head, when I was particularly looking at this was probably about 4 months ago, so I can't quote it exactly. But there's an article appeared on the Guardian website, and it was in the Guardian newspaper as well, and it was referring to this advertising campaign that had started in New York City.
Yep.
And what was happening when people were walking down the street, and then they was hearing this voice in their head that said something like, "This isn't your imagination, this is real." And obviously, people kept walking down this section of the street, and people getting pissed off. They're like, "Why on earth, is this thing happening in my head when I walk past this section of the street?"
Yeah.
And one person was saying you could have this is invasion of privacy, because you could have, for instance, Nike beaming "Just Do It" into your head.
Oh yeah.
So what it turned out anyhow was that above on a billboard there was an advertisement for a TV show called Paranormal State, and behind it was a little black box that was shooting ultrasonics down to the ground.
Mm.
So when people were walking through this trigger area, they was having beamed using ultrasonics into their head, this message. And I mean, incidentally, if you think about deaf kids, for instance, deaf children can go and swim with dolphins and they can hear them because the dolphins use ultrasonics.
Mm.
So this technology essentially probably could, allow deaf people to hear because it's using ultrasonics like the dolphins.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I was looking into the company who did this advertising campaign on the Guardian website, and the company who did it was a company called Blue Blast Media.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you've got Project Bluebeam, and then you've got this advertising company called Blue Blast Media.
Yeah.
Does that not sound very similar?
Oh, of
and
course.
so I went and did a hunt on the internet as to Blue Blast Media, and you'd expect if it was a big advertising company that they would have this, fantastic website with this fantastic new technology they've got, and all they've got is one big logo. Almost like the company doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a front company or whatever.
Yeah.
Sending out signals.
I've got to make a post about that as well. As I say, I've never got the time to pull this stuff together, but I do my best.
Well, you're doing a great job here, and I also, of course, want to mention the obvious connection that the use of blue, or why they use the blue, the blue color. I mean, this goes back to we could look at the blue in the flag of Israel. We can look at which connect with Zion, but more prominently, we can look at the Blue Lodge within Freemasonry, with which, this is very prominent within that. So
the blue ring in the Olympics, the blue Olympic mascot,
the water again, and all of that.
Yeah, everywhere you go, you'll find the blue.
We're going to take a break right here and continue talking more with Rick Clay in our members section. Don't forget to check out his blog, thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. Many more articles up there for you to dive into. We're going to continue talking more about Project Bluebeam, the potential fake alien invasion, and also how new weaponry and methods of advertisement literally can put voices in your head. We'll discuss the global coverage of the Wi-Fi system, the cell phone, and the Tetra masts that are going up everywhere. And more importantly, we'll also discuss the different levels of reality and much more in the member section. Head on over to redicecreations.com and click on subscribe to find out how you can sign up and get instant access to our member section. I also want to mention that our new forum is now up and running. rediceforum.com will get you there. And remember that if you're a member and want to join the forum, log into the member section and click on Red Ice Forum at the top to sign up for an account. Thank you very much for listening, and to producer Fredrik Palmgren will return with more Rick Clay after this break. But to round up this segment, here is a tune called System by the old band that Rick was in, called FULC. This is Henrik Palmgren. Take care. Talk more after this break.
The system is changing around me. It's tired inside. Needs a room to breathe. Do what you want, do what you need. I'll give it back. It's all the same to me. I'm not waiting. System across the take me, break me, drag me back across the take me, break me, drag me back across the take me, break me, drag me back across the take me, break me, drag me back across the take me, break me, drag me back across the
And you know what you mentioned there also about the technology. I think that's an important aspect to all of this, because we know that the VMADS, or the active denial system, which DARPA and a few other military subsidiaries, these companies have been working at, is something that's been around for a long time. And one article that we have up on Red Ice right now is about how this active denial system was actually converted into. They just changed the frequency a little bit, and basically you could use it as an amplifier that you only can hear if you're in the vicinity of the range of the acoustics, And they even did. I think the article was called "Death Ray Replaced by the Voice of God." So.
Oh God.
So this isn't sci-fi. This is happening right now.
There's something that's quite that's not concerned me, but obviously I've observed happening in this country and others, is that over the past 10 years, there's hundreds of these tetramasts that have gone up all around the country. The little square oblong radar satellite things that get put onto masts.
Yeah, the cell phone Wi-Fi.
Well, that's now everyone thinks that the cell phone and Wi-Fi, but they're actually for the emergency services. They're supposed to be used for like a separate thing for the emergency services. But basically, the amount of these masts that are going up around the place is unbelievable. And there's a website on the internet called TetraWatch, and it tells you what frequencies these masts can work on, and they can work on theta, beta, delta. They can work through the whole range of frequencies that can mess around with the human brain.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, I was in Mexico, and I was traveling around Mexico, and before I went, I was thinking, great, I'm going to get away from these tetramasks and see what it's like to have good natural headspace again.
Yeah.
Without any of these electric vibes running through my brain, and. As soon as I flew into the Yucatan, what did I see? Well, they've got the mast there, but they're about 4 times as high. And I was driving around the Yucatan, and was like, I've got to get to the bottom of this. What are these things? I don't understand what they are. And we drove into a city, capital city in Yucatan called Mérida, and I had this urge to go up a certain direction in the street, and basically walked up the street. And I could see one of these big masts coming close to me, but it seemed bigger than the rest of them. And it turned out that I'd found the central site for where all these masts originate from.
Mm-hmm.
And I went towards the gate, and there's this big buzz, and then this security man popped up, and I was like, right, best not do that. And I looked at pretty much towards the door, and on the door was the symbol for the French consulate, and there's a picture of ISIS with the 12 stars. So I was thinking, right, that's a bit suspect. But then I looked through the gate where I'd been basically warned off from going, and there's this huge logo on the side of the building that was like holding this mast, and it was an eye, and there was a pyramid in the eye.
Here we go. Huh.
And this is in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the official story in Mexico is that these masts are media masts. They're just transmitting TV everywhere.
Okay.
But obviously, you know, give them entertainment and they'll have these masts go up. They won't question them. But what are all these masts and Tetra masts doing? I think there's, in a place called Ilkley, which is, 30 minutes from Leeds, there's a personal friend of mine goes to a tennis club. And in this particular tennis club, I can't remember whether it was the government or whoever it was who paid them, but basically paid them £20,000 a year to put one Tetra mast up in that site.
Yeah.
Basically, if there's that many of them, there's hundreds of thousands of them, and they're paying £20,000 a year for every one of them.
We had a guy called Walter Graham on the program, and I highly recommend that in regards to just the overall, danger and what potentially is going on with the whole Wi-Fi, cell phone, decked phone, or everything cordless, basically. But I think it was Walter, and I'm sorry if I'm mistaken this, but I think it was Walter who talked about these Tetra masts, that this is the new system that the police use, because they managed to move away from the old analog radio frequency system that they used and wanted to bring in a new one, and they needed a more powerful system also, because they were competing, as it were, with all the other Wi-Fi and cell phone thing going on here.
I mean, apparently that's the official story on them. But apparently, most of the police are still running around using the Blackberries.
Okay.
Which is obviously insinuating that they're not really using the system that they've got set up.
Really? That's interesting. So it might be, I mean, what you're suggesting here also then, I guess, a little bit is that the infrastructure for beaming signals, if you will, into people's heads is basically laid out now. If you look at the Wi-Fi or cell phone system, they're looking at implementing this on a global level. They're talking about global coverage. There isn't one single spot on the entire Earth that you can go not to have coverage, with your cell phone company,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely all part of it. There's something with electric energy. This is almost like alien. I don't know what it is, but and the fact that it's creeping up around us and we're all being plugged in.
Yeah. And even I think it was Tesla and others who talked about the different different characters of electrical light, and apparently right now we're using one which is apparently not the best version of it, if you will.
Tesla had formulated a system that operated without wires, and it ran through the earth as opposed to overhead, didn't it?
Of course.
I think that's what was set up there.
Exactly, and even the whole AC/DC thing going on, direct current. There's another way that you can another frequency you can run the electricity on, which isn't apparently as harmful as it is right now. Even people have discovered what's known as the Lily wave within the electrical signal is basically a carrier wave also, and they discovered the Lily wave running throughout a lot of the different electrical grids. And there's a whole story behind that. We don't have time to get into all of that, but do a Google search also, curious on the Lily wave, and read up on that, because that's fascinating. So.
Okay. My personal opinion is that they decided to insist on the current system of electricity, electric distribution that we've got. Because if you look at what a pylon is an obelisk with a few things strapped on the side.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's the same shape, and I'm sure it's connected somewhere.
It's very interesting. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the also what you might think how they will present if we go back, think of either Project Blue Book or Bluebeam, or something similar, some big event or whatever. And after this point, maybe they would introduce like the new Messiah or whatever. And you theorized a little bit that this is connected with Prince William then. How do you think like a presentation of that would be in effect, and how would people be presented to an idea like that, or to continue the
Right.
question, would that even be necessary to a certain extent, because people on one level always already kind of worship the monarch, the royal family.
Not enough to create a one world religion government, I wouldn't have said, but
So it needs something more. Is that what you're saying? Needs a boost.
I mean, as I've said before, like one current theme that runs between Christianity and Islam is the angel Gabriel, which, as I've said, could be personified as Isis, identified with Isis, and I've obviously identified that with Princess Diana, and I'm obviously this is. I've got what I think one day might change the next, i.e. how I see this thing running out. But I wouldn't be surprised if it involves some re-emergence of Diana, because if you look in the Book of Revelations, for instance, it refers to the woman clothed in the sun, standing on the moon, descending with the 12 stars around her head, essentially, which refers to Isis coming down and giving birth, to the Son of God as sorts. I'm not sure. I mean, my personal opinion and how I see this unfolding, and obviously, I'm not saying that it's one specific event. It's gonna be a bit of time in which this unfolds.
Of course, yeah.
And the way I see it unfolding is essentially that it's going to involve a two-stage sequence, like a double dupe of sorts. And I think the very first stage could be associated with extraterrestrial visitors. I think that could be the very first stage of the plan. Yeah. And then obviously moving into the new Messiah and this sort of second coming, if you want to call it that. That's the one to clinch it. You'll have the aliens come down, and then you've got the second stage, and that'll clinch it, and everyone will go with that, not thinking that it's potentially all a big hoax.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? It's like double dupe, like they're gonna, because that could really reinforce it in everyone's minds.
Of course. And I mean, I remember.
So I was just going to say, however it plays out, if this thing does play out as I kind of envisage it, it's just going to be one hell of a light show.
Of course. Well, it's going to be a spectacle with no end. So,
better than any Hollywood movie.
Oh, of course. No, I mean, it's incredible. I'm thinking of a few comments that, Marcus Allen did, for instance. He talked about the Skunk Works, one of the companies behind some of the more advanced stealth planes and the bombers, that they had incredible technology that it's so much more beyond what we even can imagine. So even if we would see something really incredible, up in the sky, we still have no clue if this is human technology. I mean, we might look at this as this can't be human technology. It's impossible, because again, we're conditioned and we have all this time be compared to the older technology. If we look at it like this, to put this in perspective, I think this is an important point. If we look at, for instance, air traffic, how airplanes have, if you will, stuck in the 60s or 70s. Nothing basically has happened. We've gotten fancier seats and a few they've remodeled the design of the things a little bit, and maybe advance some of the aerodynamics so it goes a little bit better through the air or whatever.
I do believe that's part of the agenda.
Of course.
I mean, obviously the fact that that we've had no progression in technology as far as aviation is concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, I paid a visit down to the Wenceslas mine in Poland, Are you aware of that, where the Nazi Bell was supposedly operated and stuff? I took a road trip out there into
Really?
the middle of nowhere, just to go look at this. Have you seen the picture of the henge and stuff?
Is
I'm
that
not-
that the kind of octagonal or hexagonal
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of?
I took a trip there essentially.
Yeah, wow, nice.
Just to try and get a feel for the area, and it's desolate and it's destroyed. But there's obviously evidence of a huge operation going on there.
Really, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously you can follow that through, and you could easily read into the fact that we have got this technology, and we've had this technology for a good 60 years now.
Yeah, of course.
And obviously the main predominant reason for not releasing it is at the moment there's acknowledgement that we've got free energy. Then obviously everything goes to pot when they're trying to charge you for all the energy coming into your house.
Of course.
It collapses the system, doesn't it?
Of course, we know about the background now, how Morgan and the other fellows, hijacked some of Tesla's systems because they said, how the heck can you put a price tag on energy that just swirls throughout the air? Anyone can pick it up. We don't want that. We want something that we can put a meter on and charge everyone for every kilowatt hour. That's the plan here. And going back to that idea, looking at, for instance, how computers have evolved, moving on from like the 60s or whatever. That's a huge leap if we compare it to how cars have been developed, or how again, air traffic have been developed. So
it's very interesting, like the evolution of technology in the sense of computers. Obviously, my opinion is it all stems from Roswell. It does stem from Roswell.
It's back engineer technology here. Is that what you're saying?
I do believe that. I think there's, I don't know. To me, there's something when it comes to the microchip and everything that gone with it. It came out of the blue, and it's very alien.
Oh yeah. I mean, did you know that there even are a company called Alien Technology that specializes in RFID
Computers.
tag? Yeah. Yeah, that's Alienware. That's computers.
All right.
And then you have Alien Technology, and they are into microchipping and different RFID tags. Anyway, please continue. Yeah.
It's obviously there's when it comes to researching what the Nazis were into and stuff, when they were researching free energy and stuff like that. I mean, obviously there's loads of references to Hitler and theosophy and everything that goes with it. They were big into the occult and the esoteric.
Yeah.
And you never know whether, for instance, they had perfected some form of technology through some kind of you never know what rituals they undertook.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all the rumours about was it Hitler and LSD? I can't remember it off the top of my head, but basically, they could have been getting knowledge from wherever.
Of course, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's but then when you specifically go back to the Roswell incident, and you look at was it AT&T who released the first microchip about 5 years later?
Probably
can't remember off the top of my head.
That
basically,
sounds logical, yeah.
Yeah, it emerged from the same area of America, obviously, that's all connected with that kind of event. I don't know. Obviously, it's jogging my memory, this, but.
Well, exactly, and so what we're potentially looking at here, if we pull this recent little thing that we discussed here together, this might be okay. They've decided to advance technology in certain areas like the computer, and said, okay, we gotta do something. We gotta give them the illusion of progress in some areas, because otherwise there will be too much protest or whatever. But in certain areas, let's hold it back. Let's try to earn more money on the oil industry, the cars,
definitely,
all of that stuff, and then. But consequently, also how they potentially could utilize that in the end is that if they've been working on this, if you will, alien technology, then with full blown out flying discs, or even frequency-oriented energy vessels, who know what the heck they have at this point. But if they've been developing this for all this time within all the black ops that exists, and finally kind of roll out this as a big put on a big show for us, and say and claiming that this is alien, this is not human. I think that
it could be easily done.
Very easily actually. We would very much be drawn into all of that, because it would be so foreign and so weird, and kind of we will look upon this as magic, and even if we want to get more advanced here, this might even actually jog some genetic memory, or potentially some kind of thing that is lodged within the subconscious of the human species in regards to that we might actually have been visited in the ancient paths and ancient path, and that might have had a big impact, on humans back then, and we kind of carry this still within us. So in one way we're kind of awaiting or waiting for the return of these gods,
Yeah, of course. So I mean, it's there in the films, like the chap who's releasing the movie 2012, Roland Emmerich.
Yeah.
His previous film, obviously his first two films were Stargate and Independence Day, and then his previous film, his most recent film, was 10,000 BC.
Yeah.
And obviously, incidentally, most people watch that film and says, does this guy know his dates? Because basically he'd put down the building of the pyramids to 10,000 BC.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying, well, that's completely out of the blue, But obviously this guy has been reading Graham Hancock books.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this was going out to the masses that in 10,000 BC the pyramids were being built by a ruthless god who looked like us.
Of course.
Well,
exactly.
most people don't realise that they're looking at actually, stuff that's backed by true research, like Sitchin and stuff.
Of course, yeah. So, and obviously then, what happens is that people begin to potentially also question everything, which obviously is good. There's nothing wrong with that. There are many people out there who definitely are questioning Sitchin. Why he had his office in was it Rockefeller Center or whatever it was. Why he's
was he funded by them?
Well, exactly. What was that the case? What's going on here?
It's the same everywhere. I've got a book here, for instance, called The Gnostic Gospels by Elaine Pagels,
Yeah.
and it's that was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? They're funding these things.
Of course, and this is what is important. You have to look at all the pieces of the puzzle, and even if it moves you into an area that is unpleasant or what have you. I mean that's good. I mean, look at it and take it for what it is and make up your own mind. That's the bottom line here.
Yeah, completely.
So exactly, because many people have even questioned the validity of the Mayan calendar. I mean, could even that be a put-on, if you will?
I've had some deliberations on this myself, because obviously the Aztec sun disk was discovered in 1790. I think it was 1790. It's in the 1790s, and obviously, given that the Great Seal on the dollar bill was 1776. What I was talking about with Schweppes before was 1783. It was in the period of the Enlightenment. It was at a time when there was revealing a lot, as far as this progress was concerned. But I mean, the funniest thing I found was that basically the Aztec solar disk. They said that we'd lost it. We found it in 1790. It was buried under a Catholic church.
There we go.
Which was the obviously the main cathedral of New Mexico City.
Huh.
And it was underneath that.
And okay.
And I find that.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to mention that obviously it is the case that in many instances the Celtic Church they built their cathedrals upon the old religious sites in order to get the people still coming to the same site. So it's still a possibility that they build a thing on top of there and then later discovered it. But I definitely hear what you're saying here.
I don't believe the idea that they lost it, because this thing's about 4 meters high.
Of course, yeah.
It's a hard thing to lose, isn't it? It's not like you can lose it in your back pocket.
No, exactly. I mean, and it's. It's a very good point, because it's these things are always we always are subjected to the idea that things are lost or all the libraries are burnt. All the conquistadors took all the material and burned it. And in many cases, I don't think so. I think they saved it. They've taken care of the knowledge in those scriptures.
And they've not burnt them at all. They've just told people they've burned them.
Of course, exactly. And I think that if we look at 2012 then, for instance, they might be up on the game. I mean, if we look at the Vatican or the Catholic Church, they might be totally in tune with actually what is going on. They might know that there actually are a true changes, as it were, in the cosmic properties of this particular time, and things are going to happen. But obviously, they want to utilize that energy. They want to be on top of that.
They want to use it themselves.
Of course, they want to continue their agenda and just contain the same power structure. So that even though that some of these things, within all of this might be disinformation, it might be, put on, it might be exaggerations, what have you, but it still doesn't mean that everything is fake. There still might be a very core issue here might be, very true.
Well, for me, I have deliberated about the Mayans and the prophecies and stuff, and I've got a book here that's got the prophecies as translated direct, and in the actual prophecies they warn of the coming of Christianity and everything that goes with it, and you have to remember that obviously the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, and everything that's gone with them in South America and Central America, they're all indigenous.
Yeah.
Which is a completely different thing to Egypt, because Egypt were your star worshippers, whereas Maya was all about worshipping the earth, and it involved the ritual use of hallucinogenics and ayahuasca and all that goes with it, and obviously, it's a different source of knowledge for me, and that's how I perceive it, and that's why I've still got faith in essentially what the Mayans talked of.
It's a little bit like the Egyptians potentially in a way are looking more outwardly. They're looking out into the heavens, out into the sky, towards the stars, and potentially the other version of that is that they're looking inside to the inner cosmos and making discoveries about themselves. Obviously, that took place, I think, within Egyptian religion and theology too. That was an incredibly long time span, incredibly long different dynasties ruling, and there were different agendas that was going on behind that, whole
I mean,
piece.
One thing I find strange about the whole thing is that, for instance, look through the history of Egypt and the civilization, and it's always been attacking the area of Babylon, Iraq.
Yeah.
There's always been that continual war with the force from Egypt, and it's, it makes you wonder what it's really trying to fight, because it's been there all along.
Yeah. I mean,
the center, the capital of it was where civilization started, was there in the Middle East.
So they say,
and, so they say, obviously, but it just seems that it's like there's just this continual, ongoing battle that's always been going on between the Egyptians, which I'm sure, for instance, I descended from, and some of the fundamental people from the Middle East. That's interesting.
Very interesting. So what we again here potentially are looking at is a continuation of a very long agenda, and I remember getting a question about why it could be that an agenda can be propelled for such a long time or through so many generations. If we look at the fact that they might have been doing this for 6,000 years, maybe even more, and people can't get their head around why would someone who can't see the end of their of that achievement be propelling that along. There's different theories and ideas behind that. We might not even necessarily go into that this is other entities or aliens involved here, but we could go there. Do you have
you could go there easily, yeah.
Of course. Do you have any theories about this?
To be honest, I'm not at the stage where I'm prepared to even really contemplate that, because I don't think anyone truly understands that. Until we see an event that obviously involves aliens, I'm not going to jump the gun and actually say, well, it's obviously something alien.
Yeah.
You never know whether it's just the balance of life, do you?
I talked to David Wilcock the other day, and we talked a little bit about genetics and
right.
throughout the idea that these guys potentially are aware that if you keep the genetic structure, if you will, of a certain family, chances are that you actually will reincarnate back into that same family line, because your soul, as it were, is actually connected to a certain genetic structure, meaning that
that's interesting.
If a certain genetic structure actually pops up, then your soul is actually going to be attracted to that point, and you are going to incarnate right there. And that
as far as like, sorry, I was just saying, as far as aliens and extraterrestrials are concerned, I'm more inclined to come from the angle of something that's extra dimensional,
Yeah.
i.e., something that's working in a different wavelength. Because, for instance, like if you, if you just like, for instance, look at the DNA, for instance, there's a lot of research gone into the DNA and the junk DNA, and it contains human linguistic patterns.
Indeed.
And when you're looking at all that, and I don't know, it just ever occurs to me that this is something extra dimensional rather than out there into the universe.
Yeah, of course.
That's my instinctive force, like telling me that. It's
Of course, and I mean, come on, it could even be a combination of all of these things. I mean, the universe is a big place. We've not even managed to scope out what the heck is going on this planet, and we're gonna, start asking, start putting answers out there. What's happening out in the universe? I mean,
I think it's all a big lie. I think there's a brick wall about 11 miles up there. When you come to the end of it.
So this
that's
is a petri dish then, planet Earth.
Pretty much, yeah. It's one of those little air bubbles in a cup of coffee or something.
Well, I mean, and that doesn't make it less important or less interesting, of course. maybe more so. I wanted to make a few more comments. Fredrik dropped me a note here earlier about if we go back, actually again to the 1936 and the Nazi Olympics and connect that with a movie in Contact. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
I've seen it, and I've been meaning to watch that again recently because I've figured that there's probably messages in there I should be picking up.
It's very interesting. Obviously, Carl Sagan behind the book Contact, and I think he was involved in the movie script as well there. But anyway, there is one scene there at the beginning when they first initially make the contact, and I think that they are using the first televised signal from one of the Nazi rallies. Now, it might even have been during the Olympics when Hitler makes one of his speeches.
That's strange, isn't it?
They have exactly that the aliens are sending out, So there's definitely could be something to that, just the contact theme, and it might also be a hint. It gives us a hint that the Nazis actually made some kind of contact. They actually made some. They peered through another dimension. They got in contact with someone, and that later actually might have spawned or initiated the what happened in Roswell, because we know that the paperclip scientists like von Braun and all these other people went over there at the White Sands laboratories and continue their research on the rockets.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that. I mean, I'm inclined to view that obviously everything that the Hitler and the Nazis did was all part of this. It's obviously part of this same thing. It's a continuation of it all the way through.
Yeah.
But obviously that's when it was really heating up with the whole, theosophy and everything that was going with it, and occult symbolism everywhere you look.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely all coming out then, wasn't it?
Oh, obviously. I also want to talk a little bit about another guy, and to kind of just dovetail this with what you've been talking about with the introduction of a new Messiah. And this was regarding a program we did with a guy called William F. Mann. He's a Canadian Knights Templar within the Freemasonic branch of that. And we talked, a little bit about this story of the bloodlines, what they are doing right now in regards to genetic research, and that they actually are looking for. And he claimed that they actually also have found a specific line, if you will, or a specific genetic property within a family line that has to do with all this. He was kind of a little bit mysterious, I guess, in trying to encapsulate this in a more mysterious, veil, if you will. But anyway, what he talked about was this idea that they were, in a way, waiting for a new Messiah. He talked about it that they needed. Or he said in the program, we need a leader. We need someone who can take charge and unite all of these fighting factions on planet Earth. And obviously he never came out and said a name who it was at this time and so forth. But that just suggests a little bit at least that there is this kind of talk and research going on even within within some of the lodges at least over there in Canada.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine that this is worldwide, but And the question that I posed to him, and I can kind of ask you the same, was that who is this leader for? I mean, because to a certain extent, I don't care if someone comes along and claims that he's the king of the earth or descendant of Jesus or whatever. I mean, to one extent, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't affect me, not at least directly, and people can go and worship that if they want to, whatever. But he claimed that it actually was for the elites themselves. This was something for all the factions at the top who are fighting at the top of the pyramid, and it was for them. They need a uniting force. But for the man on the street, for people like us, it doesn't mean anything. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I adhere to that because obviously, if it wasn't for our, supposed leaders, then we wouldn't be at war anyhow. Because if you ever speak to anyone in the countries and stuff, they never want to be fighting with someone else, do they?
Yeah.
It's not natural to be at war, even though they'll tell you it is. I mean, I don't know. It's I obviously don't understand what the people at the top of the pyramid obviously need, and I don't understand the actual kind of internal bickering that they might be having, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't need some Christ-like figure to worship.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not a necessity. If, for instance, obviously we have got issues in the world, we've got greed and we've got power and we've got war and we've got violence and we've got jealousy and stuff, and these things will always be there while the world exists as it is. And I mean, what I've been thinking of recent days essentially is that this event that I've seen coming, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a bad event. It's going to be a good event, in the sense of I do believe that a spiritual society is going to be a much better society than what we've got now. Mm-hmm, but I still can see this being, the fact that it's still going to be like a spiritual society, but it's going to be ingrained in like a pyramid of oppression, i.e. in the same kind of, class system sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the difficult aspect to comprehend. And I mean, if you look at, like, for instance, the Georgia Guidestones, and they've got the 10 Guidestones, and it was anonymously erected by R.C. Christian, and obviously R.C. Christian is an anagram or a wordplay on Christian Rosencrantz, who's the founder of the Rosicrucians.
Right.
And obviously they've outlined on those 10 guides, on the 10 commandments on those Guidestones, their vision for a new world. And obviously it is based on a spiritual society. It's based on a lot less people as well. 500 million, I think it was, that they wanted to bring the population down to.
Yeah.
And it could be that, what is going to unfold is going to ascend the population, but it's going to reduce the population. And it could be that they're making this world for their own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what they've been working towards. I don't know. It's a difficult subject in that sense, because you could look at it from two angles. You look at it as, I mean, my personal opinion is all this Alex Jones, Prison Planet, InfoWars, fear-mongering on a political and government level, that's doing no good whatsoever. And it's because it's just diversions from the real truth behind it all anyhow. But aside from that, there's this perception growing that there's this Big Brother style police state growing around us.
Yeah.
Which is obviously we have got police, added numbers of policemen and stuff like that going around.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but all of this is needed to then move us into this spiritual stage. This is all a fictitious kind of like story. We're going to have to make us look like we're putting this horrible society on people, involving like, the police and everything that goes with it, Big Brother.
Yeah.
I don't think that they could ever, logically they can never implement anything like that anyhow, because the people will always win.
That's a good point. I mean, they have been setting up the rules for the planet also. I mean, to some extent, they've managed to implement a system on a global level, and they've been running the show basically from day one. That doesn't mean that people within the system still have power or freedom to do what they want to. Of course, there's still it it isn't a prison planet on one
No.
level. I mean, we are, you know, if we don't pay attention to all of this stuff and just move away from it, there's still possibility of us, you know, just living out in the forest, having a nice time, and never even bothering about what's going on here,
Yeah.
you know. That might change.
Interestingly enough, seeing what I see and stuff, when this was a bit back and I was looking at Prison Planet website, and, you know, I've stopped looking at it since, because it's just gets you stressed out for no reason. But basically, if you look at the words Prison Planet, you could look at it as Prison Plan ET.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
You know,
Prison
the
Plan
ET
ET.
Prison Plan.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean,
Play on the words.
it's a good point. I think for me, from a point of view, it's more like I want to keep, you know, a little bit of track on everything, what's going on. I mean, stuff in the geopolitical world that's interesting to one extent, but then, as you say, there's another level to it. And I actually want to read just a quote here in regards to that to that idea of how potentially we're being even played on the geopolitical level. And this was something that was released to a journalist who didn't reveal the exact source, but this was a senior within the Bush administration that talked to this journalist, and he reposted this in I think it was the New York Times or Washington Times. I could dig that out and reference that on our the information page on this radio show. But anyway, he said the quote says like this: the aide said that guys like me, is talking about the journalist guy now then, is in what we call the reality-based community, which he defined as people who believe that solutions emerge from your judicious study of discernible reality. I nodded and murmured something about enlightenment principles and empiricism. He cut me off. That's not the way the world really works anymore, he continued. We are an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that reality judiciously, as you will, we will act again, create other new realities which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will be left to study just what we do. Isn't that interesting? Just in regards to that, he's mentioning like that guy in the X-Files approach Dana Scully and say, I work with a group who invent the future, or trying to I spoiled it there, but he's saying that we're trying to realize what's going to happen. We're trying to predict the future, and he says the best way to predict the future is to invent the future. So that's the I guess the one level trap on all this is that we're following and monitoring people who are operating on a level that they know that, okay, we actually create reality. When we move the empire, all the people are going to look at that, and nothing outside these parameters is going to be of interest to anyone, because they're spending all the time and energy looking at, what happened through a specific, political happening, even what happened at 9/11. All energy is going into that, and to a certain extent, I see that it's a trap there. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I moved away from the 9/11 truth stuff probably about 2 years ago now. I don't know what it's difficult because people are working really, really hard in trying to bring stuff to the forefront there.
Of course.
But they it's almost like there needs to be this understanding that event was there for a reason, and it's this reason that we're following at the moment. And you might actually get your conviction of the people you're after, but even if they're convicted, these people are all instrumental in this plan, and they're never going to be sent to where we've told they've been sent. Do you know what I mean? It's all part of the great plan that's unfolding around us. William Shakespeare, the whole world's just a play, pretty much, isn't it? Or the whole world's a stage. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I see things unfolding. It's not good to get stuck in the past. Got to keep looking at the now.
Exactly. I hear what you're saying, and again, it's that, I think it's that balance between the two sides, because to one extent, if we totally ignore the past, then we're not going to be savvy to what's either going on now or what might be coming tomorrow. So obviously, like, looking at 9/11 is a very important thing. It's a key part of all of this too, because that actually helped many people to wake up to a larger
It was the catalyst, wasn't it? It was the main catalyst.
Exactly. Yeah.
I won't ever disagree that. I mean, the problem you've got is that, for instance, a lot of the people who are sticking with the 9/11, researching it on and on, and they keep coming up with more and more evidence, which is brilliant. But if and when something does happen, it's going to have jumped up on them and they won't even know what's gone on. Obviously, something on a different scale, a different level, obviously on the kind of levels that we're talking about.
The next level of the conspiracy, so to speak.
Yeah, it's going to take them by surprise because they've not put the efforts into, understanding the current situation.
Right. On that note, just I wanted to pop this question while we're talking about 9/11, because last time in the first segment of the program we did this past Sunday, you mentioned a little bit about loose change, and I got a question about that. If you could clarify what you meant, because we just rushed by that you had some suspicions about that, or.
Well, I mean, it's the same with Zeitgeist, really. 2 whirlwind internet movies that essentially, changed the way my brain thinks, and changed the way a lot of people's brains thinks.
Yeah.
And as I say, to think that the can't remember his name now, the man in question who made Loose Change pulled it all together, him and his friend,
Dylan Avery,
made all the music and stuff. Yeah, Dylan Avery, sorry. They pulled it all together from the bedrooms, and they had a lot of footage there. They'd found a lot of footage, and I'm not saying that can't be done, because it can be done.
Of course, yeah.
But I do believe that, if you think that the grand plan is to usher in this age of spirituality, it obviously requires that there's going to be some kickstart to the change in people's consciousness.
Yeah.
And obviously, Loose Change gave that kickstart. Now, whether Dylan Avery got that kickstart from the universe, or whether, for instance, that was part of the intended planning to usher this consciousness up to the level that it needs to be at. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. That would also then imply that whoever is providing these gentlemen with the material, funds, what have you, that they are. I mean, is that a dark, coming from a dark side or a negative side in regards to manipulation? Because that might be. Some people have talked about the White Brotherhood, what have you, that there's a kind of a benevolent force also working, alongside the very negative force, and that these guys are trying to raise our awareness. They're trying to enlighten us, as it were. Do you think that's possible then?
Who's that? Sorry, I misinterpreted that.
Well, basically, people are referring to it as the White Brotherhood, that alongside the Dark Brotherhood, who's working at negative things, there is this a group of other people who are working for positive change within the world. And albeit that they're still manipulating events, they're still pulling the strings, so to speak, but they're trying to make it so that it's moving in a positive direction. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is possible. Sorry, I don't know. I just the way I perceive it is that, for instance, 9/11, Loose Change, and all that came after it was all part of the intended plan.
Yeah.
I'm not really into buying the idea that there's 2 potential brotherhoods that are kind of fighting it out of sorts in the battle. There's something that tells me deep down that for instance, a year ago when I was thinking all about 9/11, or 2 years ago, sorry, and I'd realised it was an inside job, and I was running around telling all my friends.
Yeah.
That was what they wanted me to do. That was intended, because that was needed for the next stage that we're moving into.
Okay. So you're saying that is a negative thing, or do you might not want to put those kind of connotations on it?
I'm not saying it's a negative thing, because I'm not necessarily. Well, it's difficult describing this, but this whole idea that there's going to be this spiritual kind of ascension, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
If you believe that the Illuminati, when they outlined their plans for ascending the whole of the human population, into a spiritual level, which is what they did say in 1776, it was essentially that they were going to ascend humanity.
Yeah.
You could take a look at it as this is all required to get us to that spiritual state.
Right.
And I'm not saying that spiritual state is a bad state.
Sure.
but because obviously I think that's going to be a much better state than we're currently in. You know, it's almost like these people the Illuminati, who decided that they wanted to ascend humanity to this higher level, have realised that had to be done, because otherwise the Earth would probably collapse in on itself. I.e., we wouldn't look after it, we'd keep trashing it. Without the spiritual awareness, there'd be nothing left for anyone.
Yeah.
So basically, the spiritual ascension side of things is required for the next stage of human evolution in a material body. So basically, it's almost like there's this thing for me that what is going to happen, including this thing with William and everything, is potentially a better thing for the planet's survival itself. But this is for material reality that I'm talking about. You know, this isn't talking about trying to get outside of that material reality. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. And yet, what I see at this point is that the other side, or the side that potentially are trying to usher in this change now then in consciousness, as you say, they have also been very instrumental in preventing man from reaching a higher consciousness. You know, because of working on himself, he's been totally, you know, subjected to a lot of manipulation. He's been, you know, subjected to war, terror, you know, tragedy, disease, you know, you can name, you know, the whole list down.
Yeah. But if for instance you look at it on that scale, right, if for instance these people who know this information, who are ascending humanity, also realise that, for instance, death doesn't particularly matter, because essentially, you know, they'll reincarnate and they'll keep learning.
Yeah.
So you could look at it on that principle, and that's why death no longer means so much. But sorry, I've lost my track here.
No, I think what you're getting at is that through the means, if you will, of tragic forces, man grow in another way than if everything would be wonderful and positive all the time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that basically, you know, for instance, it's a terrible thing when someone dies, and obviously, but if it was done with another means, as a means to ascend that spirit or soul to a different level, then obviously it's on a much grander plan, isn't it?
Yeah.
So basically, negativity is required and tragedy is required to ascend, you know, the essence of love and everything that goes with it.
Yeah. That's a good.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can never know you never know how good you've got it until you've seen it really bad.
That's right. And you know, I don't know if we should say unfortunately then, but in many cases, the propellant, the catalyst in order to get things to happen in many cases is actually tragedy, because or you know, horrific events or what have you. It seems to be something that's kind of you know, hard coded, if you will, within the DNA or something. I don't know what's going on, but in many cases, it's everything. If everything is great in a way, that there is no progress. We cannot.
There's no progress, no evolution, no nothing, is there?
No.
And I mean that's why I always until something happens sit on the fence as to whether to say that this thing is a really bad thing or this thing is a really good thing.
Right.
I mean, deep down, what I've realised is that, you know, this thing to do with the sun worship and everything that goes with, like, worship of the sun and then the Trinity event and everything like that, is that is there to trick you and to keep coming back into the material plane, because you're feeding that system its energy. You're feeding the material world its energy there by, you know, recycling and coming back.
Yeah.
And that's where the deceit is going on, i.e., this spiritual ascension could be a really good thing, but then no one's still going to be allowed to know the true essence of, you know, what they're trapped in as sorts, with the reincarnation thing and everything. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
They're sending it so far, they're telling you so much, but not quite everything.
They'll give you just enough in order to you know, be
a good person.
Yeah, and to even keep your attention. There's something new there that kind of draws you in all the time, but they don't give you the full story, because then they would reveal the plot, you know.
And that's for instance why I say when you hear the stuff to do with the New Age stuff and the people who are talking about spiritual ascension and everything that goes with it, is like, that's all very well and very good because it's brilliant for humanity, but it's only going to a certain level. There's that next stage on.
Hey, you know what? I think that this is a great thing to round things up here. We spent another great 2 hours with you, and it was very interesting talking more with you about this, ask you some more questions, and just toss different ideas, theories, philosophies around like this. I love it and appreciate it very much. So it's been
good.
Yeah, great having you back on the show. Tell us again about your website, and if you have any, what plans you have for future posts, or what's on the horizon for you, Rick.
Okay, well, the website's thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. Currently, I'm just going to be... I've essentially covered through this radio talk a lot of work, and I'm going to be spending a lot of my time compiling the evidence for you to actually read at your own time, and so you can see where I'm coming from. And that's my first step, really, to get on top of things.
Brilliant.
And then, obviously, I've recently been speaking to some friends of mine in association with getting some... maybe some videos produced on the back of my findings. So,
great.
Obviously, stay tuned.
Very good. thecosmicmind.blogspot.com. Rick, thank you very much for coming on. We'll do it again soon, I hope.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Brilliant.
Thank you.